Chapter 281. One man makes the entire world move. Within 15 minutes, every council member and elder except two were in the meeting room once again. They noticed Russell's grim expression and asked while sighing, "What happened now, Kazi Kagai-sama?" Their sigh wasn't an act. All of them were sick of the recent events. It was just one thing after another continuously with no respite. Russell didn't say anything and just handed them the scroll. Their eyes widened and arms shivered in rage and horror as they read the report. Yoseki shouted, "This is outrageous. We are in an alliance. Do they want to launch a full-fledged war?" All of them were experienced. They reached the same conclusion as Russell. Russell said, "I received these reports from the cities and towns around Shongto a few minutes before I called the meeting. Wait for some time, there are still more people to come." Yoseki looked around and asked, "Who else is remaining?" As if to answer his question, the door opened and two very old ninjas walked in. The council members and elders were surprised. They were Ebizo and his sister Kyo. Behind them, the messenger finally sighed in relief. Bringing these two here was a huge headache, he thought. "I know she is just fooling around, but one of these days she might really end up dead." Kyo and Ebizo immediately noticed the tense expressions in the room. Kyo asked, "Why are your expressions so grim? I haven't even played possum yet." Russell handed them a scroll and said, "This isn't the time to be fooling around. Please read." The siblings began reading. Unlike the time when Gara was kidnapped, Russell was still alive. Though he was junior to them, they couldn't dismiss him casually like Bucky. In addition, their health was much better as compared to what it would be 6 years later. Their eyes widened as they completed reading the report. Kyo chuckled and said, "That's why I told you to not form any alliances. They will stab you in the back the very first chance they get." However, her brother said, "True, but we were the ones to make a move first. They didn't act against us until we took steps towards breaking the alliance." Ebizo's words reminded the council members and other elders that it was Suna's choice that led to Konoha's retaliation. Goza gritted his teeth and said, "But their actions are outrageous. There were numerous ways to counter our moves. There was no need to do something so drastic. I'm afraid that they intend to launch a war." Rasa nodded and said, "I'm of the same opinion. I plan on deploying 2,000 ninjas along the border with the Land of Rivers to deter Konoha." "What are your opinions?" The council members were surprised. They realized that Rasa already had a plan. He had just called them here to inform them and check if they had any ideas. However, considering how grave the situation was, no one opposed him. Only Kyo laughed in disdain, while Ebizo shook his head. He said, "If you do that, then it will give Konoha an excuse to mobilize as well, and if Konoha indeed wants a war, then they will be prepared. Such a frontal confrontation is what they would want to see. In addition, the culprit who made this mess will also receive more opportunities to keep creating a mess in the West and worsen the situation even further." His words caused everyone to frown. They thought for a bit and realized that it made complete sense. Goza asked, "Then what would you recommend, Elder Ebizo?" Ebizo said, "Instead of deploying an army on the front lines, divide them in small squads and discreetly deploy them in the deserts between here and the Land of Rivers. Have them deploy various traps to harass any incoming army. Even if Konoha marches, we shouldn't defend the front lines. Instead, let them enter the desert. We will fight and stall them here instead of fighting a quick and decisive battle. I doubt Kumo or Io would miss the opportunity to take advantage if Konoha is stuck in a drawn-out battle here. In addition, we can use this time to find and kill the one making a mess in the West. As long as he is dead, we won't have to worry about our backs." Ebizo's words made sense. Everyone nodded. Only Seijo asked, "But what if our estimates are wrong? What if this is Ia's scheme and they plan to attack us when our forces are facing Konoha?" Before Ebizo could answer, Goza answered, "Let them attack. It's only a vast desert from the Land of Birds to here. We can use our alliance with Konoha to make them attack Iwa through the Land of Grass, and we can move our forces from the west and east to intercept and stall Iwa's army. In case Iu and Konoha have allied, then we will have to stall them both and form an alliance with Kumo and have them attack Konoha. In that case, the war will enter a stalemate." Everyone agreed with his answer. Seeing that there was no other objection, Rasa said, "All right, let's do this. Seijo, you will lead 500 ninjas to the west. You will be responsible for scouring the deserts and providing more security to the cities there. If you encounter the copy ninja, don't engage and inform me. I will move towards the escape routes to intercept him if he decides to escape the county." Rasa turned his eyes towards the siblings and said, "In my absence, I'll leave the safety of the village to you two. Yura will be returning with Gura in a few days. Please inspect his seal as well. Goza, you will be responsible for slowly deploying 2,000 ninjas towards the land of rivers and have them deploy traps and prepare ambushes. The rest will aid you. Any objections? No one objected. Rasa got up and left. Within an hour, 500 ninjas departed from Sunagakure towards the western part of the country to hunt for Kakashi, who was neither the culprit nor present there. The real culprit had a nice long sleep and was enjoying his lunch in Ikuraka. He wasn't aware of the movements inside the land of wind, but if he was, Fujin would wonder what sort of expressions Rasa, the council member, the elders, and the 500 ninjas would make if they learnt the truth. Though Fujin didn't care about this matter, others did. The next morning, every major village received reports that 500 ninjas had moved from Sunagakure towards the western part of the land of wind. Due to how massive the movement was, every spy in Sunagakure noticed it immediately. Most leaders were puzzled as to why Suna was making such huge movements. Inoki wondered, what's going on in Suna? They have already deployed more than 600 ninjas, and now 500 more, and even Rasa moved. Don't tell me that bastard Rasa intends to start another dumb war. He immediately called for a council meeting. After a discussion, they decided to deploy 500 ninjas on the borders with the land of bird and another 750 ninjas on the border with the land of bear. Just like Onoki, the fourth Reikage A was also puzzled. After thinking for a bit, he decided to secretly ready his forces to take advantage in case a war broke out. Unlike the rest of the world, two people were very clear about the situation. Shikaku analyzed the news. I can understand why the 500 ninjas left, but why did Rasa leave? Do they not know that Fujin already left? He opened the report Fujin had made and checked the end. He thought, his report doesn't mention how he returned. Now that I think about it, he returned way too quickly. Does he have a flying summon, or know a space-time ninjutsu? He thought for a bit before giving up. Leave it, I'll just ask the Hokage. According to the movements, Rasa likely wants to hunt Fujin. But Fujin is already here. A smirk formed on his face as he thought, looks like you will have a nice wild goose chase for quite some time. His smirk faded away as he let out a sigh. Unfortunately, once they give up, there is a high likelihood of them moving those troops towards our border, and thanks to the vast deserts, we won't even know where that army is. The best way to counter this would have been to deploy Konoha's forces. Unfortunately, that's the worst option here. I'll have to deploy many Ambuan spies in the land of river to warn us if the Suna army enters it. In addition, I will have to have Konoha's forces prepared for war. So much work. Fujin's face appeared in his mind as he decided, no more long-term missions for this guy. Fortunately, I sent him to Suna. If this was Kumo, the fourth great ninja war might have already started. Fujin was blissfully unaware of all these developments. He was back in his training ground doing his morning physical workout after a long time. Chapter 282 Ambition. Fujin stretched his body casually as he wondered, should I increase the intensity of the training seal? Though I didn't train my body for almost 3 months, I did eat healthy and ran a lot. Alright, I'll increase it from 40 to 45. Fujin had long reached the maximum limit on the training seal that Hiruzen had created for him during his academy days. During his time in the Ambo, he had replaced it with a new training seal that he created. This one could apply 4 times the max pressure and resistance as the previous seal. Forgetting about all the turmoil he created a few days ago, he began training with maximum intensity once again and continued for 4 hours straight, before going to Ikuraka for breakfast. As he ate the ramen, a smile could be seen on his face. He thought, now this is a good life. Sleep long, train hard, eat delicious food and don't worry about anything else. If I can't break through the limits to reach the top and events progress just as they did in the original story, then perhaps I'll retire after the Fourth War and recreate all the famous fast food chains from my previous world here. I noticed Fujin's good mood and asked, what's the good news, Fujin? Fujin shook his head and replied, no good news, just missed the ramen for the past few months. Tsuchi smiled and said, it's good to have you back again, Fujin. Fujin nodded. He lifted the bowl and drank the soup and said, thank you for the meal. I'll see you tomorrow. I replied, take care, Fujin. Don't train too much. Fujin nodded and left as he walked back to the training ground. He thought, though a retired life enjoying all the delicacies sounds pleasant, it'd be a pity if that's all I managed to do after working so hard. My current strength is pretty much at the elite Junin level. As rank is still quite far, but I feel that it is just a matter of time before I reach it as long as I keep training hard. I should reach it before Akatsuki starts collecting the tailed beasts. And if I can learn Senjutsu or Flying Thunder God, I'll be able to rise all the way to the peak of S rank, reaching a similar level as Jiraiya or Minato. Perhaps only Nagato and Obito would be able to keep up with me then. However, once I reach that stage, getting any stronger will be difficult. If I ignore the Otsutsuki, only 4 ninjas are known to surpass that level. They are Hashirama, Madara, Naruto and Sasuke. But Madara and Sasuke were able to do it due to Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto did it due to Kurama. As for Hashirama, he is just ridiculous. No point in thinking about him. The only way I could potentially keep up with them is if I capture and seal a tailed beast in me or through the 8 inner gates. But even these have limits and dangers, and aren't surefire. Lost in thoughts, Fujin reached the training ground. He let out a sigh as he thought, to climb to the very top might need some drastic actions and insane planning. And unlike those 4, I won't have any help. The only advantage I have is that I know the major events in the future. I'll need to take advantage of anything I can. Only then I will have any chance. But I need to reach rank S first. Only then I can begin acting as well. For now, it's time to continue training. Fujin's hands moved rapidly as he weaved hand seals when Fujin transmigrated to this world. He, like anyone else, wanted to reach the peak of this world. However, unlike the others, Fujin was very aware of how dangerous and hazardous this world was. The threat suppressed every desire other than his will to survive in a world teeming with adversity and danger. As he grew trained, fought and overcame obstacles, his spirit grew resilient and his body honed to a razor's edge. The pursuit of survival became a testament to his unwavering determination. However, as he slowly carved his path through the crucible of trials, a subtle transformation took place within him, imperceptible even to his own consciousness. His confidence grew. He no longer had to be worried about missions going awry. He was aware of the ninjas that could threaten his life, and he had multiple means of escaping even from the worst situations. Due to this, a seed of evolution took root in the very depth of his being. Every step he took forward, every victory he experienced, and every improvement in his strength nourished the seed. The path to survival had ignited a desire to reach the very top of this world and leave an indelible mark upon its tapestry. Driven by this newfound desire, Fujin set his eyes on the pinnacle and began his training. Wind release, wind explosion, clone jutsu. Fujin closed his eyes as he sensed the movement of chakra through his body. Soon, a wind clone was formed in front of him. Fujin looked at the clone as he observed. I see, the normal wind clone has yin and yang chakra in equal quantities. However, this clone didn't have the same balance. Instead, it was mainly made of yang chakra. The wind clone nodded at Fujin and looked in the opposite direction. He instantly disappeared and appeared on a boulder round 50 meters away. He placed his palm on the boulder and exploded. Fujin observed the explosion and nodded in satisfaction as he observed, good, the explosion is almost 3 times as strong as what my normal wind clones could do. But with such an imbalance in yang and yin, this clone should have some limitations. I need to test it. Fujin weaved the hand signs once again and created another wind explosion clone. He followed it up by creating a wind clone and flickered away. The 2 clones looked at each other. There was no need for any words to be exchanged. Both jumped away from each other. 2 spheres of wind appeared in the hands of the wind clone. He launched both wind explosion spheres at the other clone. The wind explosion clone immediately got out of the way. At the same time, 2 spheres of wind began forming in his hands. However, instead of forming proper spheres, the jutsu collapsed. The wind explosion clone was surprised and looked at his hand while thinking, what the hell, I can't use a simple D-rank jutsu. The wind clone immediately took advantage of the opening and built up his chakra. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. The wind explosion clone immediately noticed the incoming attack and flickered out of range. He tried making wind explosion spheres again but failed. Fujin observed the fight and realized, I see, since the balance is so off, the wind explosion clone can't use normal jutsus. More likely it can only use jutsus that require more yang chakra. I guess the only way to use this clone is to flicker and explode. But despite this, distinguishing between this and a normal wind clone is quite tough. Once I am able to make this clone without any hand signs, I can confuse my opponents with ease, so the effect would be quite similar to if the clone could use jutsus. As Fujin analyzed, the wind explosion clone couldn't form any jutsu at all, so he gave up and flickered towards the wind clone to self-destruct and make the fight a draw. However, the wind clone immediately flickered away, and the 2 began a game of tag. Fujin watched with a deadpan expression as he thought, I created you 2 to test out the differences. Why the hell are you 2 playing tag? He immediately dispelled both the clones and analyzed. Making this clone without seals shouldn't be difficult, but I'll leave it for later after I become used to using it. It'll save time. Fujin began weaving hand seals again. Anticipation could be seen in his eyes. Of the jutsus he found, he was the most excited about this jutsu. Wind Release Assassin's Rush Jutsu. Immediately a high amount of chakra began flowing around Fujin. The chakra was rapidly converted into wind, and in an instant, a vast amount of wind was forced behind him. The wind blasted multiple trees behind him and uprooted them. At the same time, Fujin disappeared and traveled in a straight line at a speed far exceeding the speed of wind. Instantaneous body jutsu. In the blink of an eye, Fujin appeared in front of a boulder. Chakra concentrated in his fist as he punched the boulder. The boulder was instantly blown apart, and a wide grin could be seen on Fujin's face. He analyzed. Great speed, though it uses a lot more chakra than flickering. It will be very domineering in a battle. With practice, I'll be able to sustain the wind longer and even change my direction freely. Combined with my swordplay or Senju Taijutsu style, it will be extremely lethal. Not to mention, it also prevents any attacks on my back. Alright, I'll master this jutsu right away. Chapter 283. What makes a jutsu rank A? For 1 hour straight, Fujin continuously trained the Assassin's Rush Jutsu. His breathing became heavy as he thought, damn, it's been such a long time since my chakra reserves hit so low. Rank A jutsus are very taxing on chakra, but it isn't as bad as I thought it'd be. A thoughtful expression appeared on Fujin's face as he thought, I used to think that the more destructive or complicated a jutsu is, the higher ranked it'd be, however. Now that doesn't seem to be the case. After all, in terms of pure destructiveness, none of the rank A jutsus I read is anywhere near as destructive as Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. Instead, it seems like the jutsu is ranked depending on how efficiently it can utilize the yin and yang aspects of the chakra. Though I learnt this jutsu just an hour ago, I have tried it dozens of times, and I don't see any way to optimize it further, like I could optimize my rank C and B jutsus. The reason for this is that this jutsu is already optimized to limit. It's the same for Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. The ratios of the yin and yang chakra were optimized to be what is the most effective. So looking at it from another perspective, when I optimized my jutsus using yin and yang chakra earlier, I was actually increasing their ranks, or at least bringing them closer to rank A. This is why I directly managed to learn Blade of Wind Jutsu. After all, I had already modified Windsword Jutsu enough to replicate the same results as the Blade of Wind Jutsu. I guess the experienced ninjas like Hiruzen and Orochimaru have already completed this process for all or most of their jutsus. It's probably why they don't use a lot of higher ranked jutsus, as their rank B and C jutsus are basically as strong as a rank E jutsu. I guess Renjiro was implying this back then. I thought he was just referring to Super K-Graph jutsus. Fujin concluded. In essence, a rank A jutsu is a pinnacle jutsu that can't be improved any further. As for the S-rank jutsus, they probably can't be explained with this logic. They should be jutsus that either surpasses these limits like Reissuns Urons, or jutsus that are beyond logic like the Dead Demon Consuming Seal. Fujin began walking out of the training ground thinking, anyways, I'm on the right track. No point in thinking about S-rank jutsus for now. Time to meditate until I recover my chakra. A mischievous smile appeared on Fujin's face. His chakra signature transformed as he changed into his Anbu attire with a different mask. He entered Anbu's training in one of the wind training rooms. Within the next 6 hours, he absorbed all energy from the wind crystals in 3 wind training rooms. He left as quietly as he arrived while thinking, looks like maintaining disguise anymore wouldn't be possible. There is no way Hiruzen won't know that it is me. Still, this is fun. I'll keep up the disguise for old time's sake, ha ha ha. He left the Embo headquarters and continued training the Assassin's Rush Jutsu. In the next hour, his chakra ran out once again. However, he had reduced the number of hand seals required to use the jutsu to just 1. Satisfied with his progress, he went out for dinner. Round the same time, an Anbu ninja appeared in Hiruzen's office and reported, Lord Hokage, the energy in wind crystals in 3 wind training rooms suddenly disappeared. As per my estimates, 2 of them should have had around 40% energy while the last one should have had around 75% energy left. Hiruzen's expression immediately went dark. He cursed in his heart. That brat, I knew it. There's no one else as greedy as him. He didn't even wait for 2 days after returning. Hiruzen looked at the Anbu and instructed, it's fine, you don't need to monitor wind training rooms anymore. The Anbu ninja was puzzled. He wondered, why did you make me monitor it for over a year then? And why did the problem suddenly start? And why is your expression so dark? Seeing how dark Hiruzen's face was, the Amber Ninja didn't dare ask any questions and left obediently. Hiruzen angrily thought, how many hundreds of millions of rye worth of wind crystals did this brat eat? However, he soon sighed helplessly as he analyzed. But if his speed of absorbing the energy is so high, it means that his talent in wind manipulation has increased even more, which is good for the village. If he can reach S rank, then this is a small cost to pay. I'll turn a blind eye to it. Besides, it's not like I can ask him to stop anyways. Even if I make him admit, I can't do anything to him. And knowing his greedy nature, he'll likely spend months in those rooms until Konoha runs out of wind crystals. For the next couple of days, Fujin repeated the same activities. He made rapid improvements while making Hiruzen's heart ache due to how rapidly he was going through the wind crystals. Finally, on the fourth day, Fujin stood in the training ground. A large amount of chakra appeared on his back. The chakra began converting into wind and blasted backwards with huge force. Fujin was instantly propelled towards the trees. He quickly changed direction without slowing down and navigated through the densely packed trees for a couple of minutes. As he moved, chakra gathered on his right fist. He jumped upwards before changing his direction downwards. The winds propelled him rapidly towards the ground as Fujin punched the ground. Immediately, a loud sound could be heard. A crater with 15 feet radius and 3 feet depth was formed on the ground. At the same time, multiple cracks spread through the ground for dozens of meters. Fujin jumped back on his feet with a grin on his face. He shook his palm as he muttered, "Speed is power." This jutsu amplifies the power of the Senju Taijutsu style even more. However, it hurts like hell. I'll need to mix Iron Skin Jutsu into this as well later on. For now, Fujin rapidly weaved hand seals and slammed his hand on the cracked ground. Wind release geyser creation jutsu. Immediately, the air began moving rapidly in the crater and through the cracks in the ground. In a second, sharp winds rushed out of the cracks. At the same time, the sharp winds inside the cracks began widening them. Fujin stopped the jutsu and analyzed. I initially thought that this jutsu would only be useful to kill enemies hiding underground. In the Fourth Great Ninja War, this technique could be used to kill Zotas by thousands if I catch a large number of them underground. But on second thought, this can be an excellent continuation while using the Senju Taijutsu style. After all, no one would want to take a hit from a chakra-enhanced punch head-on. If I use the chance to punch the ground and release this jutsu, the enemy will be caught completely off guard. It will be a good tactic, but I'll have to learn how to use this jutsu without hand signs as well. Fujin let out a sigh as he thought, I was planning to move on to Fuin Jutsu today. Leave it, I'll master this jutsu first. If I'm assigned new ambu members under me, I'll have to train them, and the initial missions will likely be police duties in the village. I can use that time to learn the seals as well. Fujin continued training while he trained. Shikoku was busy reading the numerous reports that he kept receiving. He muttered, first Awa moved 500 ninjas to the border with the Land of Birds and 750 ninjas to the border with the Land of Bear. In response, Suna deployed 200 ninjas on each of the borders. And in Kumo many ninjas are moving around. All this confusion over a simple promotion mission. Shikoku was left speechless. He thought, fortunately Suna and Ava haven't moved into those buffer countries, otherwise Kumo will move for sure, and this time we won't be able to fool the world and get the Land of Iron to be in the same camp as us. Still, I believe Onoki just got worried due to how many Suna ninjas moved west and took precautionary measures. The matter should cool down after a few weeks, as neither intends to start a war, but if 3 major villages are moving around and we don't move, others will get suspicious. Kumo might think that we are weak or unprepared for war. Meanwhile, Suna will confirm that we were behind those recent events. Shikoku got up and laid a map on his table as he analyzed the actions Konoha should take to come out of this period unharmed. After running a few calculations, he made up his mind and went to Hiruzen's office. Hiruzen looked at Shikoku and immediately realized why he was there. Shikoku said, Lord Hoikage, in light of recent events, I have come up with a plan. Hiruzen cut him off and said, No need to consult me, just implement what you planned. I have full confidence in your capabilities. Shikoku's expression immediately became dark. Hiruzen knew all about the recent events. However, since Fujin had returned to Konoha, there would be no further hostilities. So the situation would diffuse by itself as no one other than Kumo wanted a war. Shikoku obviously realized Hiruzen's thought process. His face was dark because Hiruzen threw all the work on his shoulders. He nodded and left the room. Later that day, 500 ninjas left Konoha and moved towards the border with the Land of Grass. They had strict orders to not enter it. At the same time, smaller squads sneakily left Konoha one by one. In 3 days, round 1,200 ninjas had left Konoha this way. They all met up at the assigned location for Kakashi to take control of this army. They stayed hidden while preparing for war. However, Shikaku arranged for Kakashi to drop hints of their movements. In a few days, all the major villages became aware of a large Konoha force wandering around their borders with the Land of Hot Water. Chapter 284 A long game of shogi. By the time the Konoha ninjas were deployed outside the village, Fujin had managed to perform the geyser creation jutsu without the use of hand signs. Satisfied with his progress, Fujin decided to move his attention to Fuin Jutsu. He returned to his basement and created a shadow clone which dispelled itself instantly. The shadow clone that was in the library immediately received the message. He packed the scrolls and placed them back and dispelled himself. Fujin received memories and began analyzing. During the last week, Fujin left one clone in the library to plan out the order in which he should learn the seals. He didn't have clones working actively on the seal, as training rank A jutsus was very straining on his chakra. He could barely train for an hour straight with all his chakra. A frown formed on Fujin's face as he realized, the 4-symbol seal is too complicated. I won't be able to learn it right now. In fact, most of the top seals are very complicated. I will have to start with the easier seals. It's fine though, I still have a lot of time. Fujin planned for a couple of minutes and decided, using too many clones to learn the seals will be redundant. I'll leave some chakra with me and meditate in the wind training room. As long as none of my clones is dispelled, I won't be disturbed and can meditate in peace. Fujin created a shadow clone with 70% of his max chakra. The clone used multi-shadow clone jutsu to equally divide his chakra into 60 clones. They began practicing the seals while Fujin left his house and moved towards the Ambu training facilities. In a remote location in the desert, a camp was set up. A dozen similar camps were set up in the desert. However, this camp was special as it housed one of the 5 kaijus in the world. A messenger ran into Rusa's tent and reported, Lord Kazi Kage, 500 ninjas have left Konoha and appeared on the eastern border of the Land of Grass. Awa reciprocated and deployed 500 ninjas on the western border of the Land of Grass, and Awa's ninjas still haven't entered the Land of Birds or Bear. A frown formed on Rusa's face. He thought, what the hell is happening? I first thought that this was done by Konoha, but when Awa moved, I felt that I could have been wrong. But Awa didn't invade us and instead Konoha assisted us. How do I make sense of this situation? He thought for a bit but couldn't come to any conclusion. Finally, he instructed, have Goza deploy more spies in the Land of Grass. If Konoha and either have allied, then this might be a trick to fool us. Is there any news from Seijo? The messenger shook his head and answered. No, he hasn't even seen the shadow of the culprit. It's as if he has disappeared from the desert. Rusa snorted and instructed, where will he disappear? Ask him to keep searching. The messenger replied, yes, Lord Kazi Kage, but there is another news. It's just that we haven't confirmed it yet. Some spies reported that Hatek Kakashi is leading a 1,200-strong ninja army and conducting military drills near their border with the Land of Hot Water. So some council members think that he has already left. Rusa frowned and furrowed his eyebrows. Once again, he received information that didn't make any sense. Shikaku couldn't guess that Suna would put the blame on Kakashi's head. If he did, he'd have kept Kakashi hidden to keep Suna occupied in the west. After thinking for a bit, Rusa said, it is likely a trick by Konoha to make us drop our guard. Since it isn't confirmed, Konoha probably made someone use transformation jutsu. Let Seijo keep doing his work. The messenger nodded and left. For the next 3 weeks Suna kept scouring the desert and for obvious reasons they didn't find Kakashi there. However, in these 3 weeks, they stabilized the situation in the west. Though there was still resentment against them, law and order was maintained, and common people were assured of their safety. However, the political situation still got worse as Toshio's family reached Wind Capital and complained about the events in Shunkto. Round the same time, Izo and Kumo received some details about the events in the western regions of the Land of Wind. Onoki relaxed as it meant that no war would happen, while A was upset for the same reason. Regardless, the tensions died down as everyone realized that no war would happen. However, both countries raised their guard against Konoha, as they were the only suspects. Neither Iwa nor Kumo wanted to deal with such a headache, so they provided additional security to their nobles and increased the number of patrol units at the same time. Suna began plotting their revenge and started what would be a long game of shogi with Shikoku. In these 3 weeks, Fujin practiced Fuin Jutsu for more than 12 hours every day with 60 shadow clones, while he spent a similar amount of time meditating in the elemental training rooms. Finally, he received a message asking to visit Hirizen's office. Fujin thought, "It's almost a month since I came back. Did they find suitable subordinates for me? But why did the messenger ask me to appear in the normal mission outfit instead of amber uniform?" Fujin stopped his morning workout and went to Hirizen's office. On entering, he saw a bunch of civilian officials along with Shikoku Choza and Homura in the room. Hirizen saw Fujin and said, "Fujin, you'll be accompanying me on a mission to the land of tea." "Wait outside for a while." Fujin furrowed his eyebrows as he wondered, accompanying him on a mission, is this supposed to be a rank S mission? He nodded and waited outside the room. Shikoku looked at Fujin and wondered, why did Lord Hokage ask Fujin to follow him on this mission? He looked at Hirizen as a thought appeared in his head. Does he intend to groom him like Kakashi for the Hokage position? I can see why, considering his performance on the previous mission, but he's still too young. Homura also looked at Fujin and thought, so this is the kid that Hirizen refused to give to Danzo. I wonder what's special about him. Hirizen hadn't mentioned Fujin's achievements in the Land of Wind to anyone, so no one apart from him and Shikoku knew, though Danzo, Homura and Koharu had questions and doubts after the recent event. Hirizen feigned ignorance and pushed the blame on Iwa. Inside the room, discussions continued for another half an hour. Finally, the civilian officials left. A few minutes later, Hirizen left as well. He was followed by Choza, Homura and his Anbai guards. Hirizen looked at Fujin and said, "Come with me." Fujin followed him. The group of 8 left the village and began traveling to the south. Hirizen informed Fujin, "We are going to the land of tea to discuss some trade-related matters as well as some cooperation. You don't have to do anything, just pay proper attention in the meeting." Fujin was confused. He tilted his head and asked, "What will I observe in a trade-related meeting?" Fujin's first thought was that Hirizen knew that someone would ambush him, but he immediately dismissed that idea. Despite his age, Hirizen was one of the strongest ninjas in the world. Why would he need Fujin's protection? He wondered, is he planning on burning some city and needs an assist from my wind jutsu? Hirizen replied, "Just pay proper attention. I'll tell you later." Fujin said, "All right." The group traveled through the vast forest rapidly. Fujin was a bit surprised that Homura was able to keep up with ease. He looked at him from the corner of his eye and thought, looks like despite his age he has retained a good part of his strength. I wonder why he and Koharu never fought in the original story, be it Orochimaru's attack, Pain's attack or the Fourth Great Ninja War. They didn't participate in any fight, despite being available. I don't recall properly, but I think they didn't fight even when Kurama rampaged inside Konoha. At the same time, Homaru also sized up Fujin. He observed, "Not bad. Despite traveling with Hirizen, he hasn't put his guard down and is prepared for any ambush. His chakra isn't bad either. It's at the Junin level at such a young age. However, I can sense that he is hiding a portion of his chakra. So I can't be sure yet. Still, it shouldn't be much higher. But why does Hirizen want to make him a negotiator?" Chapter 285 Negotiations. The journey to the land of tea took a couple of days. Hirizen made a lot of small talk on the way to inspire Fujin and his Anbo guards. Fujin took the opportunity to interact with Choza, as he thought. Akimichi clan's body size manipulation is part of Yang release. Though it's unrealistic to get the methods of learning the jutsu from him in just this journey, there is no harm in creating a good relationship with him. After all, he is the only one from the Inoshika Cho trio to live after the Fourth Great Ninja War, and if in the future my reputation becomes as good as Hirizen's, I could try to ask him for it. The next afternoon, the group from Konoha arrived at Degachoizi port in the land of tea without any incident along the way. However, Fujin was surprised when they arrived outside the gates of the village. Every major noble in the city was standing at the entrance of the gate. In fact, even the daimyo of the country was present. Fujin had made multiple trips to this country as an amber ninja in the last couple of years, so he easily identified most of the nobles and ministers waiting at the gates. Fujin peeked inside to see the sides of roads packed with spectators. Fujin thought, I didn't think I'd underestimate how much influence this old fox still has. the daimyo of the land of tea stepped forward and cordially greeted. Lord Hokage, it's good to see that you are still hale and hearty. Hiruzen smiled and replied, it's great to see that you are doing well too, Lord Daimyo. While the two exchanged pleasantries, two people walked to the sides of Daimyo. Hiruzen looked at one of them and said with a smile, Yuriki, are you doing well? Wasabi Yuriki bowed slightly and answered with a smile, I have been well, Lord Hokage, all thanks due to how efficiently Konoha carries out the missions. As he spoke, the face of the other man fell, however, he quickly hid it behind a fake smile and greeted Hiruzen politely. Hiruzen looked at him and thought, so he is the one who wants to take over Daigachoji port from the Wasabi family. Hiruzen just nodded and began talking with the daimyo. Wagarahawi's Kuroka controlled his anger and didn't say anything disrespectful. One of the missions that Yoroiki referred to cost him more than 90% of his forces and over 50% of his wealth. After that, he lost his ability to create trouble for the Wasabi family. He had still not recovered from the blow that 5 squads sent by Hiruzen had dealt the Wagarachawi's family when they dared to enter the Land of Fire to eliminate Wasabi Dachi. Having learnt his lesson, he had no intention of openly opposing Hiruzen. If it wasn't for ensuring his own benefits, he wouldn't even have shown up there. As they talked, the tea daimyo and Hiruzen walked into the village. Yoroiki, Kuroka, the nobles, ministers and the Konoha ninjas followed them. As they walked, Fujin noticed a lot of curious gazes from the people that crowded both sides of the road. Some cheered, but most just watched casually. He wondered, are they really so curious to see a kaiju, or did the daimyo arrange them here to create a favorable image of the citizens on Hiruzen? We are here for trade discussions after all. The 4 Ambu ninjas had all their attention on the crowd in case any assassin was hidden. Homura, Choza and Fujin weren't much concerned about this and just casually walked. The crowds thinned as they reached closer to the daimyo's palace. After entering, they were led into the grand hall inside the palace. The hall had several old and expensive artifacts. It had a large circular table at the center, which was adorned with elegant tapestries and exquisite tea sets. Hiruzen took his seat while the tea daimyo sat opposite him. Yuiki and Kuroka sat next to the daimyo. The ministers of the daimyo and other nobles occupied seats next to them. Meanwhile, Homura sat to Hiruzen's right, while Choza sat to his left. The Ambu stood behind Hiruzen, while Fujin stood awkwardly thinking, should I take a seat or stand along with the Ambu? Homura was one of 3 village elders, while Choza was a clan leader. Meanwhile, Fujin was just an orphan who was in the Ambu. Though he had gained a lot of strength, most of it was known to very few people. In addition, Hiruzen hadn't given him any purpose on this mission. Hiruzen looked at Fujin and said, take a seat as well, Fujin. Fujin nodded and sat next to Choza while thinking, in the last mission, Shikaku didn't give me any specific instructions, though I wasn't interested in knowing the aftermath. I'm sure the last month would have been hell for him. I'm surprised that Hiruzen still didn't give me any instructions. At the same time, the eyes of the daimyo and the nobles fell on Fujin. They were surprised that Hiruzen asked someone so young to sit alongside the 3 of them. The daimyo looked at Fujin and thought, to bring someone so young here, is Hiruzen planning something? Regardless, this young man must be someone worthy of keeping an eye on. Hiruzen looked at his amber guards who nodded in response and disappeared. The faces of the few ninjas in the daimyo's camp got serious. Only a few of them managed to see how the amber guards hid themselves. Soon, a bunch of servants appeared and served delicious warm food with great fragrance on the table. The daimyo said with a smile, I know you are very busy, Lord Hokage, so I decided to arrange for lunch while we discuss a trade deal. Hiruzen smiled and replied, that is very thoughtful of you, Lord Daimyo. The servants served all the food and left. Soon, the doors to the grand hall were closed. The tea daimyo asked, so, shall we start the discussion, Lord Hokage? Hiruzen nodded and said, yes, we received multiple requests from you, so you can begin, Lord Daimyo. The tea daimyo said, all right, Lord Hokage. As you know, there is a civil war happening in the Land of Water. Due to this, many ninjas are fleeing away, unfortunately, instead of living peacefully. Most have resorted to banditry. Though our major cities are safe, they cause great harm to small villages. When we send missions to Konoha to eliminate them, it generally takes around a week for any squads to come here, and in the last month, the delay has been even longer. This causes unnecessary loss of life and property, so my request is for you to establish a small military outpost in the Land of Tea, at least until the chaos caused by the civil war in the Land of Water is settled. Until last month, the tea daimyo was fine with the 1-week delay. However, Due to the sudden buildup of tension between the four major villages, the villages reduced the number of missions they accepted drastically. Shikaku had deployed 1,700 ninjas within a few days to deter other countries, and was showing that the other troops were being prepared as well. So Konoha was quite short on manpower as well. A frown formed on Homuro's face as he said, "Lord Daimyo, that won't be possible. After all, if anyone has any enmity with Konoha, they might attack these ninjas instead of trying to attack in the Land of Fire. So it will be very dangerous for our ninjas." Hiruzen and Choza maintained their silence, while Fujin just watched carefully. He was interested in seeing how they would negotiate. The daimyo said, "We can host them in big cities that are well protected, so they won't be in any danger normally. The only time their lives will be at risk is during the missions, but that would be true in any case." Homura shook his head and said, "That isn't the same. We study every mission properly and then assign squads with the necessary strength to complete the mission safely. If we don't, then the number of deaths will be very high." Homura's words caused the daimyo to fall silent. After all, he was putting the Konoha ninjas at risk. He couldn't force this matter. Jiroiki said, "Lord Hokage, there is something that you can do. What if we consider every mission as rank A?" Kuroka snorted and asked, "Do you know how expensive that would be?" Jiroiki immediately replied, "How can money be compared to the lives of our citizens? If needed, I can contribute my family's wealth for this purpose as well." Kuroka was surprised. At the same time, he was elated. He thought, "This is great. If he wastes all his money here, then I can catch up with his family in strength within 2 to 3 years. He immediately became quiet and let Jiroiki commit a blunder, since the opposite party was willing to pay. Homura became silent and looked at Hiruzen. The entire room paid attention to what his decision would be. Chapter 286 Lord Hokage is magnanimous. Hiruzen stayed silent for a minute. The silence made the nobles from the Land of Tea nervous. Fujin noticed it and thought, "I remember that in my previous world, some politicians used to have long silences in their speeches. Looks like it is quite an effective tool here as well." Finally, Hiruzen said, "It isn't a matter of money. However, I can't ignore the suffering of the people here. I'll deploy an elite Junin along with 4 dozen ninjas at the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Tea on the coast. You can issue your missions to them. That will reduce the journey time from a week to 1 or 2 days, which wouldn't be much longer than deploying ninjas in this or any other city. However, you will have to pay an appropriate cost for this." Jiroiki asked, "What is the cost, Lord Hokage?" Kuroka snickered in his mind as he thought, "Great, take all the fool's money away." Hiruzen maintained another few seconds of silence and said, "I'll need 400 fire crystals and 400 wind crystals every year that we deploy the ninjas here." Hiruzen's request surprised all the people from the Land of Tea. Choza and Homura already knew that Hiruzen would ask this. It was the main reason why they accompanied him. However, Fujin was surprised. He quickly looked at Hiruzen as his left eye twitched and thought, "Don't tell me, he brought me all the way here to tell me that he knows I'm using the wind crystals, and he wants me to decrease the rate of using them because Konoha is running out of them." Hiruzen noticed Fujin's gaze but didn't look back at him. He thought, "Though this isn't the main purpose of bringing him here, it is a nice bonus. He should be smart enough to notice the hidden message. It'd be great for the village if he doesn't consume them at such a ferocious speed." Fujin's initial consumption speed was already giving Hiruzen headaches. However, in the last month, Fujin focused a lot on meditating there. Due to this, his rate of consumption increased several times. In the last month alone, he had consumed the energy in around 80 wind crystals by himself. Fujin immediately removed that thought from his head and analyzed, "No, how can the great Grand Hokage ask a young and promising ninja to reduce using wind crystals? I feel ashamed of thinking so little of the leader of my village. I'm sure that he brought me here to tell me that no matter how many wind crystals I use, he has my back. Even if Kono runs out of wind crystals, he will visit smaller neighboring countries and ask them for wind crystals. This way, I can keep absorbing their energy without worrying that the village might run out of them. Sigh, he is such a great guy. Going up to such lengths to reassure the younger generation. I'll work hard and absorb energy from more and more crystals to repay his faith in me. It's a shame that shadow clones can't absorb this energy, otherwise I'd have repaid all faith." Fujin looked at Hiruzen again with a smile on his face as he concluded, "It doesn't matter what anyone says. The third Hokage is the most magnanimous person in the world." Hiruzen would have noticed Fujin smile normally and sensed that something was wrong. However, his attention was gained by Kuroka, who spoke loudly. How can we do that, Lord Hokage? Those crystals are meant for training our own ninjas. If we give them away, the strength of our ninjas would drop. Kuroka was enraged. He didn't mind Yoiki wasting his wealth, but the elemental crystals were important to him. He was buying as many as he could by bribing the ministers. Homura retorted, no amount of elemental crystals can help you train an elite Junin. The cost is far lesser than what the Kiri rogues will inflict upon you. Homura's words caused silence to spread among the nobles. However, Kuroka was unresigned. He said, that isn't the same. There is no way we can. He was interrupted by the tea daimyo. Kuroka, stay quiet. Kuroka immediately went quiet. Though he was influential, his influence was nothing when compared to the tea daimyo's power. The tea daimyo looked at Hiruzen and requested, please understand our difficulties. Hiruzen replied, I understand your difficulties, Lord Daimyo. However, Homura's words are right. Still, I don't want to reduce the strength of your ninjas, so in order to compensate for the loss, I'll allow some of your ninjas to visit the base Konoha will establish at our border and receive training from our experienced ninjas. This would be far more beneficial for your ninjas. Hiruzen's proposal excited all the officials. If they could have ninjas from their families or factions train under capable ninjas from Konoha, their standings and influence would improve substantially in the land of tea. Many nobles immediately said that it would be a good thing for the country. Kuroka frowned as he thought, if Konoha gives preference to training ninjas from the Wasabi family, then we will be at a disadvantage, but everyone should have the same worry. I'll use it to suppress him later. Kuroka decided against opposing the idea, as most of the nobles were in favor of it. The daimyo had the same worry, though he had good relations with Konoha. It could be dangerous to his position if the Wasabi family's influence rose without any restraints. He asked, how will you decide which ninjas to train? Hiruzen replied, you can choose which ninjas to send. The number of ninjas and the duration of training will be decided by the elite Junin we send to the new post. The tea daimyo was relieved. He nodded and said, all right, but I still have one issue. I can pay you 400 fire and wind crystals each for the first year, as we have some stock, but I can't sustain it for every year after that. I can only pay 100 fire and wind crystals each. Hiruzen already knew that they wouldn't be able to do that. He said, that's too low, but understanding your difficulties, how about you pay me 200 fire and wind crystals each from the second year? The tea daimyo thought for a bit and said, that's reasonable. Let's do this deal, Lord Hokage. The tea daimyo's limit was 230 crystals. He willingly agreed. Shoza said, in addition, we would also like to discuss additional imports of herbs from your country and some discounts on the tea you sell. Yoroiki smiled and said, all right, but our population needs additional meat and some other food items. They immediately began negotiating for discounts on both sides. Fujin watched with interest as both sides negotiated for benefits non-stop shamelessly. The officials from the land of tea were unwilling to offer discounts on tea until Homura pointed out that they have eliminated almost all bandit groups from the land of fire and that the new post could slowly bring the same change in the land of tea. So their business won't be as risky anymore. Fujin was especially impressed by Homura's expertise at negotiating without any shame. He thought, looks like all of Hiruzen's friends are as shameless as him. No wonder they never fight. Why bother fighting and risking your life when the younger generation is willing to do that enthusiastically? I wonder if this is why Jiraiya doesn't want to be the Hokage. Still, negotiating seems fun. Never thought I'd enjoy seeing it. It's kinda the way I kept bugging Hiruzen and Renjiro for stronger jutsus. I wonder if Hiruzen brought me along to show that my shamelessness is still not enough, and for me to take inspiration from Homura and these nobles and ministers. That said, I wonder if the legendary talk no jutsu would work during negotiation between shameless politicians. After a long discussion, the land of tea agreed to export multiple rare herbs to Konoha. They even agreed to a 5% discount on it as Konoha would buy them in bulk. In addition, they agreed to an 18% discount on their tea exports. As for Konoha, they agreed to a 7% discount on the meat and food items exported to the land of tea and agreed to increase it to 12% after the bandit groups in the land of tea were eliminated. After some more discussion about smaller matters, the meeting finally ended. Hiruzen and Homura exchanged glances. Both were satisfied with the outcome. As usual, Homura acted as an aggressive negotiator, while Hiruzen acted as a peaceful and empathic negotiator. The officials from the land of tea were also satisfied with the results. The meeting concluded with a toast, a symbol of unity and cooperation between the land of tea and Konoha. After exchanging pleasantries and bidding farewells, the Konoha group left as quickly as they came. However, the discussions in the Grand Hall weren't over. Instead, they were just about to get very intense, and unlike the discussion so far, it would be extremely unfair to one person. Thank you Bigobi for supporting me on Patreon. Chapter 287 Guiding the Younger Generation. As soon as the Konoha ninjas left, the nobles and the ministers exchanged glances. Without exchanging any words, a scheme was formed in mere seconds. Kuroka said, "Lord Daimyo, we need to decide on the distribution of the ninjas that will be sent for training. And we also need to decide who will bear the cost of the elemental crystals we have to give. Since Yuiki agreed to pay Konoha out of his own pockets, I say we should let him bear the majority of the cost." Kuroka was immediately supported by the ministers that were bribed by him and other nobles. After all, if Yuiki paid, it meant that they would have to pay less. Yuiki was immediately put under pressure. He was disgusted by their actions. However, he stood by his morals and said, "Lord Daimyo, I'm willing to contribute to the safety of our citizens." The Daimyo nodded. He was worried about Yuiki using Konoha to increase his own influence. He said, "It won't be fair for you to pay the majority cost. However, since you were the one to put forth the proposal and offered to pay, I won't reject it. But making you pay the majority share won't be fair. I'll contribute 25% of the funds needed for this and you do the same. The other nobles will contribute the remaining 50% equally. As for the ninjas, we will wait for Konoha to send the details. I will allow everyone to send an equal number of ninjas. But since the Wasabi family is paying more, they will get the first choice. Does anyone have an objection to it?" Kuroka was surprised. He wasn't expecting Yuiki to go along with what he said, and he didn't expect the daimyo to agree to his words. Though Yuiki only had to pay 25, it would still be many times more than what he would pay. In addition, Yuiki only received the first preference. This implied that he would at most get to send one more ninja than the rest of the nobles, so he received nothing despite paying more. He was elated as he realized, "This is a great opportunity. Since I helped the other nobles save a lot of money, they will owe me a favor. I'll use these favors to secure control of Digarchese port in the future, but I'll have to be careful of Yuiki. He could sway public opinion in his favor by spreading the fact that he contributed the most to public safety. As soon as I leave, I'll begin spreading rumors that Yuiki offered Konoha the money of this country and paid them several times what we got in return. Though not true, I'm sure every other noble will cooperate with me, though the daimyo can clear his name. Yuiki would gain no benefit from spending so much money here." Kuroka and the rest immediately agreed. The group discussed a bit more and left. As they left, the daimyo looked at Kuroka's back and thought, "This guy is good, having bribed so many of my ministers. He could corner Yuiki despite having much lesser influence overall." The daimyo shook his head and concluded, "Unfortunately, he is too short-sighted. The Wasabi family is backed by Konoha. They won't allow Digarchese port to switch hands if he truly threatens the Wasabi family's position. Konoha will eliminate him or make me take action. Well, until that time, I can make good use of him." While the officials of the land of tea were discussing, the Konoha's group was traveling rapidly across the country. Their next target was the land of noodles. Hirizen looked at Fujin and asked, "Fujin, what did you observe during the negotiations?" Fujin almost replied involuntarily, that everyone sitting in a position of power is extremely shameless. Fortunately, he controlled himself and answered, "We have to work very hard to secure benefits for our citizens." Hirizen nodded and said, "Yes, but that's not what I am talking about. Analyze our actions and words during the meeting. Tell me why we did what we did and their consequences." Fujin fell into thought while Homura and Choza looked at him. Both were surprised at how openly Hirizen intended to groom Fujin. After thinking for a while, Fujin answered, "Konoha is a lot stronger than the land of tea, and we are the only country that has a land border with them. So we were in a position of power in this meeting. However, since our relations are very good, we couldn't be very forceful." Fujin turned his eyes towards Homura and said, "I guess Elder Homura came along to act as the bad cop while you played the good cop to get what Konoha wants, though I'm pretty sure that they could see through this act, just that they didn't dare to say it out loud." Homura's eyes widened as he looked at Fujin in surprise. He was impressed with Fujin's analysis but felt that it was nothing extraordinary until he heard the last sentence. He thought he could see through their acting. Fujin continued, "You used the opportunity provided by the unstable conditions due to the civil war and probably something that happened in the last month due to which we weren't able to accept the missions in time to get the elemental crystals. Since the daimyo agreed so easily, you should have calculated how much stock he had. As for the yearly payments, what you expected should have been under 200 each. I guess that the situation in the country is quite bad, due to which the daimyo didn't negotiate a lot. As for the tea and herbs discount, I guess you want to take advantage of safer traveling conditions to save some money. Hiruzen nodded and replied, good analysis, especially the deterrence part. It's the advantage that we get due to being strong. Other countries will act carefully in order to not provoke us. As for the elemental crystals, my lower limit was 150 of each. If I didn't offer the daimyo to train their ninjas, he would have probably bargained down to this number. However, you aren't completely right about the tea and the herbs negotiations, though safer traveling conditions allowed us the ability to propose that. The main reason for doing it was to mask the elemental crystal deal that we did. That is why Choza accompanied me on this journey. Fujin thought for a bit and asked, the other major villages might take action if we openly gain the elemental crystals. Hiruzen nodded and answered, yes, while elemental crystals aren't very useful for someone at my level, it is quite useful for young ninjas at the Chunin level. Though they won't start a war over this, they would do something similar and get the elemental crystals assigned to their neighboring villages forcefully. In addition, it would also expose that we are spending a lot on our military, so other villages will also openly build their armies, and we will progress towards the fourth great ninja war. Fujin nodded and replied, that makes sense. He thought, in the last month I noticed that the effect of the wind crystals on me is reducing slowly. If I keep consuming them at this rate, their effect would be negligible after around half a year, or rather, it'd be more appropriate to say that I'd need a lot more wind crystals in order to have some improvements. But if my speed of absorbing the energy doesn't increase, then it'll take months of meditation to make small gains, definitely not worth the time or cost it'd take. However, Fujin had one confusion. He looked at Hiruzen and wondered, why is he teaching me how negotiations happen? Hiruzen noticed Fujin's look and asked, are you wondering why I'm explaining to you how negotiations happen? Fujin nodded. Hiruzen chuckled and said, I want you to be responsible for Konoha's negotiation in the future. Fujin was surprised. He asked, isn't it the Hokage's job to negotiate? Also, I have no experience in this, Hiruzen replied. Not really. Any of the elders can negotiate in my absence, so can Shikaku as the Junin commander. As for the experience, don't worry about it. I'll be taking you along to all the negotiation meetings from now on. We will be heading to the land of noodles next. Just like the land of tea, we have good relations with them as well, so the discussion will probably go similarly. However, since they are a newer and smaller country, the amount of elemental crystals with them will be lesser. Just observe once again and understand how the negotiations go better. A month later, we will go to negotiate with the land of river and the land of grass. Our relationship with them, though good, isn't as good as these two countries, so the negotiations will be tougher. During those negotiations, you are allowed to speak if you feel that it will benefit the village. Homura was surprised once again. He looked at Hiruzen and thought, he has permission to speak after just 2 meetings. Sensei took us to several meetings for over 2 years before allowing us to speak. Why is Hiruzen being so impatient? Chapter 288 Forgotten Job Offer. Before Fujin could nod, Homura objected, that won't be appropriate, Hiruzen. Wouldn't we suffer a loss if he speaks something that is incorrect? Though I am impressed by his analytical ability, he needs to be a part of a lot more such meetings before allowing him that right. Fujin looked at Homura. He wasn't offended, as he completely agreed with his analysis. Shoza silently agreed with him as well. Homura looked back at Fujin and thought, I was even going to mention that he isn't strong enough to be given such a responsibility. But that might be demotivating for the young kid. Besides, Hiruzen should have enough confidence in his talent if he is giving him such a responsibility. However, Hiruzen dismissed his worries and said, it's fine. After all, we old fellows can handle it if he messes up. You don't need to worry about failure, Fujin. Just do what you think is the best. Fujin nodded and replied, all right, I'll try my best to not disappoint you and get more benefits for our village. However, he couldn't help but feel that something was off. He wondered, why is he in such a rush? I know that he isn't dying. Is Konoha short on capable diplomats? That shouldn't be the case, as Konoha is the best at diplomacy. As long as it doesn't involve Kumo. Don't tell me that he just doesn't want to leave me alone in the village when he is touring outside. No, that shouldn't be the case. After all, if I mess up, the potential costs will likely be much higher than the few wind crystals I use up. I guess he really wants me to become a good negotiator. Though it will take away some of my training time, it's fine. This seems fun and will be a good way to take a few breaks. Just like Fujin, Homura was confused as well. He wondered, why is Hiruzen pushing him so much? Even though we are old, the younger generation still has Kakashi who is very smart at such things. And there is still Shikaku and Jiraiya who could help him out. Hiruzen smiled on hearing Fujin's reply and said, good. Hiruzen knew that Homura would be confused, but he didn't care much. After all, Homura had rarely interacted with Fujin. He thought, my student's generation was almost wiped out by the two Great Wars. The ones who survived died during Kyuubi's rampage. Though Minato's generation produced a few decent elite Junins, no one other than Minato and the clan leaders showed any interest in politics and diplomacy. While Kakashi is smart and takes responsibility when necessary, he had a very upright upbringing. First under Sakumo's care and then under Minato's tutelage, he doesn't have the same selfishness and greediness that Fujin possesses. In the future, even if Kakashi becomes the Hokage, Fujin should be the one responsible for leading Konoha's negotiations. Of course, it'd be great if Shikaku or Jiraiya aided Kakashi. Unfortunately, I don't see either of them willing to travel to foreign countries unless there is no other option. So I'll have to guide Fujin and have him prepared for this task before the next big war starts. As for Fujin's strength, Hiruzen didn't even bother considering it. After all, unlike Homura, he was quite aware of the reason behind Suna's headaches. The group rested the night at one of Konoha's patrol camps and traveled to the land of noodles the next morning. Just like in the Degachese port, the daimyo and a few nobles were waiting for Hiruzen's arrival. However, the old daimyo had retired and passed the seat to his son. The new daimyo immediately greeted Hiruzen respectfully and enthusiastically, but before he could speak more, his eyes landed on Fujin. His eyes sparkled immediately, and he exclaimed, Fujin, it is good to see you again. Have you considered my offer? Fujin looked at the new daimyo in surprise as long-forgotten memories slowly resurfaced. He thought, I almost forgot about him. I had only politely said that I'd consider it. Did he not get the message? Or did he get infected by shamelessness after inheriting the seat? Hiruzen and Homura were puzzled. Hiruzen asked, what offer, Lord Daimyo? Kikara looked back at Hiruzen and said, a few years ago, Fujin and his squad had helped our country to come out unscathed from a disastrous situation. I was so impressed by his performance that I invited him to join my guardian team. Hiruzen replied, he looked at Fujin and recalled, I recall Tomatis leading a mission here. But I don't recall him saying this. Did Fujin decide to create external relations for some reason? He looked back at Kikara and said with a smile on his face, unfortunately I can't let Fujin go as of now, but I have many capable ninjas under me. I'll assign one to serve as your guardian. Kikara was immediately in an awkward position. He wanted Fujin, not any other ninja, and if Hiruzen sent a ninja by his own will, Kikara wouldn't be able to trust that ninja, especially if he decided to make some moves that were unfavorable for Hiruzen. Unfortunately, he couldn't reject Hiruzen directly. He cursed in his mind, I messed up, I should have kept my calm. The boy doesn't even want to join my guardian team. I just got excited as he came here just a few weeks after I took over. Hiruzen maintained a kind smile. He obviously wouldn't let Fujin waste time here. However, this was too good of an opportunity. He could openly put a pawn in the daimyo's court, and even if he was rejected, Kikara would be very passive during the negotiations, and he will try to compensate him for declining him earlier. Fujin noticed Hiruzen's purpose as well. He sighed in relief as he thought, for once I'm thankful for how crafty this old fox is. I was afraid that I'd be put in an awkward position. Though I could refuse, it would have put us in a passive position. Now the situation is completely reversed. Kikara smiled and replied, thanks for the generous offer, Lord Hokage. I will be grateful to receive your help. However, let's discuss this later. Come, let's enjoy the feast that my chefs have created for us. He quickly guided the Konoha ninjas in his mansion as he thought, I'll have to consult father on this issue. I can't afford to offend him just after becoming the daimyo. Once again, they had similar discussions, along with a lavish lunch that had a large variety of noodle dishes. After a couple of hours of discussion, Konoha agreed to create a similar outpost on the border with the land of noodles. However, instead of an elite Junin, the outpost would be overlooked by a veteran Junin. In exchange, the land of noodles agreed to supply 125 fire and wind crystals each, and 50 of them every year after it until the situation calmed down. In addition, they also agreed to sell noodles at a discount in exchange for discounted meat imports from Konoha. but the biggest gain for Konoha was something else. Kikara informed the details of Hiruzen's offer to his father. The old daimyo sighed knowing the error his son made. He instructed, "It's fine. You don't have any threat from Hiruzen. But ask for someone who is young, preferably under 20, and say that he shouldn't have been a part of any black ops. In addition, stay on guard when with him, especially if you plan on doing anything against Konoha's interest." Kikara's father was well aware of Danzo's reputation. He trusted Hiruzen, but had no intention of letting his son's life be in Danzo's hands. Though he wouldn't be able to verify whether the ninja was in the ambu or not, he knew that Hiruzen would receive the message. Kikara nodded. He put the same conditions to Hiruzen, who agreed immediately. With all the matter settled, the Konoha ninjas bid farewell and left. While they were back on their way to Konoha, Hiruzen looked at Fujin and asked in a teasing tone, "I wasn't aware that you had a job offer from a daimyo. Why didn't you tell me, Fujin?" Fujin shrugged and replied, "It was years ago. I completely forgot about it until I saw him again. Besides, I thought that Tamatas reported it to you." Hiruzen replied, "So Tamatas knew as well. Weird that he forgot to report to me." Else I'd have remembered. Fujin looked back at him and said, "Well, probably for the best. We did gain a huge advantage today." Hiruzen nodded. However, Homura thought, "Yeah, because we were lucky. It'd have gone a lot smoother if it was reported." Hiruzen began discussing the negotiations with Fujin and gave him more tips. This continued until late at night, when they finally stopped in one of the newly created patrol camps in the Land of Fire. Post the Uchiha massacre, Shikaku had ordered the construction of several patrol camps deep within the Land of Fire. These camps weren't meant to patrol the borders. Instead, they patrolled important routes and at times went on random paths to patrol more thoroughly. The group from Konoha stayed here to have a peaceful sleep. However, the night wouldn't be a peaceful one. Chapter 289 The Unlucky Squad. The ninjas in the patrol camp were very respectful towards Hiruzen, Homura and Choza. Since Fujin was with them, he received the same treatment. They immediately made the best arrangements for everyone. While eating dinner, Fujin thought, "The normal food tastes kinda bland after enjoying two exquisite feasts. Oh well, at least it's much better than my cooking." Like Fujin, everyone ate dinner. Hiruzen even praised the cook and told some stories over the dinner to reignite the will of fire in everyone. Finally, the group went to sleep in the small camp. The ninjas in the patrol camp guarded the camp with a lot of enthusiasm. After all, their beloved Hokage was resting in it. At the same time, a dozen kilometers away, 6 ninjas were hiding in the forest. They were surrounded by thick forest cover. As they sat around a map that was laid on the floor, one of the ninjas asked authoritatively, "Are you sure that the intel is accurate, Namosa?" Namosa replied, "Yes, Hideyoshi-sama. According to our intel, Konoha has established a new patrol camp here." Hideyoshi took another long look at the map. After a couple of minutes, he said, "Good, let's move closer. We will destroy the camp before continuing our journey." His words shocked the group. One ninja immediately said, "But Hideyoshi-sama, our target isn't this camp. Why don't we just go around the camp and avoid it? It would be troublesome if Konoha begins hunting us." Hideyoshi looked at that ninja and asked, "Kanam, are you the leader, or am I?" Kanam immediately became nervous and said, "It's you. I'm just worried that if they have any Hyuga or sensor, then we will be sensed and our mission will have to be abandoned." Hideyoshi scoffed and replied, "You don't need to be worried about it. With me here, they won't have any opportunity to report us. Besides, I doubt a random patrol outpost will have a better sensor than Namosa." Kanam sighed secretly as he thought, getting promoted to elite Junin has inflated his ego even more. Though Konoha is not as strong as it used to be, they still have many existence that can decimate us with ease, especially since their sanins randomly roam throughout the country. But he is right, we should be all right. Namosa is a very capable sensor, Hideyoshi instructed. Namosa, lead the way and sense them when you are in range. Namosa nodded. The group of 6 moved quickly through the dense forest until they were around 2-5 km from the patrol camp. Namosa made a hand seal and activated his chakra field. Immediately, a chakra field with a 3 km radius spread around him. As the chakra field engulfed the patrol camp, 4 sets of eyes opened instantly. Fujin got up and wondered, are any other Konoha ninjas passing through? He didn't activate his own chakra field. Hiruzen, Homura and Choza also got up. The ambo guards were already up. As for the ninjas stationed at the camp, they didn't notice the chakra field. Namosa sensed everyone and frowned. He said, "Hideyoshi-sama, the camp has 9 ninjas. 4 are genins, 3 are chunins and 2 are junins. I believe there are 2 civilians as well." His fellow ninjas were confused. Kanam asked, Why does such an insignificant post have 2 Junin ninjas? Hideyoshi thought for a bit and said, it looks like Konoha is hiding something here, or perhaps the Junins are escorting 2 important civilians. Regardless, this could be more important than our mission. He looked at Kanam and instructed, Kanam, you will engage 1 Junin while I will kill the other. The rest of you kill the Chunins and Genins and aid Kanam. Keep the civilians alive. I want to interrogate them. Everyone nodded. Not a single person had any fear on their face. After all, Hideyoshi was an elite Junin, and all the other 5 ninjas were Junins. However, if they knew that the 2 civilians that Namosa sensed consisted of an elder of Konoha and the Hokage, they would have turned tail and ran until their legs couldn't carry them any further. Fujin and Choza left their rooms and appeared in the open. They had both suppressed their chakra to Junin levels. They were the ones Namosa detected. As for the Anbu, they had completely hidden their presence, so Namosa couldn't sense them. Fujin's eyes glowed as he observed the surroundings. Surprisingly, he didn't see anyone. He said, looks like the sensor is a bit capable. I can't see anyone in a radius of 750 meters. Choza replied, we have many sensor ninjas who can sense for over a kilometer, especially in the Yamanaka clan. Let's wait for them to approach. Fujin nodded. The 4 Anbu guards stayed behind to protect the camp, while Hiruzen and Homura didn't show up outside. In a minute, 6 figures appeared in Fujin's eyes. A look of surprise appeared on Fujin's face. Choza asked, who did you see? Fujin replied, I don't recognize their chakra signature, but one has chakra high enough to be considered as an elite Junin, and the remaining 5 have Junin levels of chakra. But I have remembered the chakra signatures of all elite Junins in Konoha. Did someone get promoted recently in secret? Choza got ready for combat and grabbed his bow, and replied loudly, not that I am aware of. I'll take on the elite Junin. You cooperate with the Anbu to take care of the rest. Others moved back inside the camp. The ninjas from the camp were surprised to hear that. They didn't know what was happening but obeyed Choza. Choza's words were loud enough to be heard by the 4 Anbu. They immediately disappeared and hid themselves. Namosa sensed the movements and said, the Chunins and the Genins have moved inside the camp. Only the 2 Junans are waiting outside. I guess they notice my chakra field, but they shouldn't be aware of who we are. Hideyoshi said, it's fine. It doesn't matter if they know or not. They will die very soon. In a flash they appeared in front of the camp. Fujin and Choza frowned. The ninjas were wearing Konoha headbands, but they didn't recognize any of them. At the same time, the expressions of the 6 ninjas also became grim as they realized, it isn't just a Junin. It's a Kimichi Choza, an elite Junin, and a rather famous one. Choza said loudly, identify yourselves. Hideyoshi knew that he wouldn't be a match for Choza one-on-one. He instructed softly, change in plans. I'll keep a Kimichi Choza occupied. You 5 kill that kid and then help me. A smile formed on Fujin's face and a sword appeared in his hand as he heard his words. He thought, if there was a ranking based on luck, these 6 would definitely rank the lowest. A similar thought ran through the minds of every Konoha ninja, of all places. They attacked the camp where their Hokage was resting, despite having so few members. Hiruzen observed the situation from his room and wondered, who are these guys? Seeing their numbers, they shouldn't be here to assassinate me. But since when did the Land of Fire have such powerful rogue ninjas who impersonate Konoha ninjas? At the same time, his eyes moved towards Fujin as he thought, though I have read all his battle reports, I have never seen him fight. This would be a good opportunity to see him fight. At the same time, Homura also watched Fujin. He was curious as to why Hiruzen was so interested in grooming him. The 6 ninjas jumped towards Fujin and Choza at the same time. Choza gripped his bow staff tightly as he took his fighting posture. At the same time, he unleashed his chakra. Their attention was immediately glued to Choza. Hideyoshi gritted his teeth. He cursed. His chakra is almost twice that of mine, but we have the advantage of numbers. Unfortunately, Fujin took advantage of the momentary lapse in concentration. He immediately disappeared. Namosa's eyes widened. He immediately grabbed his kunai and swung it in front of him and shouted, be careful. His shout attracted everyone's attention. They noticed a sword appearing in front of Namosa. The kunai and the sword clashed. However, instead of hearing the clash, they saw the sword cut through the kunai as if it was hot butter. Namosa's eyes widened. He didn't have any time to move. He could only see as the sword cut his head off. Except for Hideyoshi, the remaining ninjas immediately attacked Fujin. However, he continued with the momentum and moved a long distance away in the same direction. None of them could hit him. Soon a thud was heard. Namosa's body fell on the ground and subsequently dragged along the ground due to his momentum. His head fell some distance away. At the same time, the transformation jutsu was dispelled, and his real appearance could be seen. Hiruzen squinted his eyes on seeing the real face. But the ninjas had no time to watch their fallen comrade. They looked at the ninja who they had thought to be an easy target. Disbelief could be seen in their eyes as they thought. Namosa was a veteran Junin. He wasn't a weak Junin like those from smaller villages. And he was one of the best senses we had. How was he killed off so easily? However, they had no time to grieve for him. After landing on a tree, Fujin flickered back towards them. Choza engaged Hideyoshi and ensured that he couldn't move towards Fujin. Seeing Fujin, one of the ninjas opened his mouth and shot out 6 air bullets at Fujin. Fujin's eyes widened and he immediately jumped up in the air as he thought. Sealess jutsu, these guys are no pashuvas. Luckily I caught the sensor off guard. It would have been troublesome if he ran away and hid his chakra signature. The remaining ninjas immediately began weaving hand signs while one threw shurikens at Fujin. However, they suddenly felt danger. 2 ninjas quickly moved away. However, the one who just shot out air bullets and the ninja who threw the shurikens couldn't react quickly. 2 swords pierced through both their bodies. Hideyoshi watched the scene through the corner of his eyes and was horrified. He attacked Choza fiercely while screaming in anger. Why does this small post have a clan leader and 4 Ambu ninjas? Chapter 290. Losses keep piling up. The 2 Junins were killed by the 4 Ambu ninjas who were hiding. Their transformation jutsu was also dispelled. Half of the intruders were dead within a minute of beginning the clash. Kanam gritted his teeth as he looked at Hideyoshi with pure hatred. He had led them all to their deaths. However, he had no time to curse him. A dozen air bullets were heading at him. He immediately dodged while looking at Fujin, who appeared in front of him and swung his sword at him. He thought, he must be using wind nature chakra flow. Otherwise, Namosa wouldn't have lost so easily. He grabbed a kunai and ducked down to avoid the sword. The sword passed harmlessly from over his head. At the same time, he jabbed the kunai towards Fujin's chest. However, Fujin's cheek suddenly puffed out. Kanam's eyes widened and he stopped attacking and instead rolled to the side. At the very moment he moved to the left, Fujin shot a vacuum bullet at point-blank range. The bullet passed by Kanam's left ear and ripped it out completely, but he still managed to survive and rolled away. However, such damage caused his transformation jutsu to be dispelled. Fujin watched his real face with some respect in his eyes. He thought, he's good. If instead of ducking he had moved away, he would have been dead, and if he continued that attack, he'd be dead again. But he survived on both occasions. At the same time, Kanam was in shock as he observed Fujin. He thought, who is this kid? His attacks are relentless and uses wind vacuum jutsus without any hand seal. I don't even have any time to create a jutsu. Fujin was about to attack when he noticed someone moving extremely quickly. Kanam sensed that someone had appeared behind him and immediately swung his kunai backwards. However, his arm was blocked by a palm. At the same time, 2 fingers jabbed into his back and hit just behind where his heart was. Chakra poured from the fingers into Kanam's chakra point and blocked it. At the same time, several other chakra points in his body were blocked. Kanam suddenly felt a wave of weakness. He fell to the ground, knowing that his life was no longer in his hands. He turned his head to see who the attacker was. His eyes widened in terror as he muttered, "Though, Lord H. Hawk, Hokage." Hiruzen didn't reply and jabbed 2 fingers into his neck. Kanam instantly lost consciousness and collapsed on the ground. Fujin was surprised. He thought, the gentle fist of the Hyuga, he can replicate the effects of that as well. Did he memorize the locations of some important chakra points? While Fujin was dealing with Kanam, the other Junin was also killed by the 4 Ambu ninjas. Only Hideyoshi was still alive. However, he looked at Hiruzen with horror in his eyes. No matter how arrogant he was, he knew that he wouldn't last even a minute against a cage. He stopped fighting with Choza and asked fearfully, "Why is the Hokage here? Don't tell me he was the civilian that Namosa detected." He immediately regretted his decision to attack this camp and thought bitterly, "Why did I decide to attack this camp?" Hiruzen looked at him and said, "I am more curious as to what Sonigakure ninjas are doing in the Land of Fire and why you are attacking Konoha's patrol camp." Hiruzen was aware of the strength of the ninjas in the camp. If he had not stopped there, those ninjas would have died tonight, and considering the strength of the attackers, Konoha would have a very difficult time finding them. Hideyoshi's eyes widened. He didn't expect Hiruzen to recognize them. He had no intention of facing Hiruzen or leaving his life and death to the Konoha ninjas. He immediately began running away. However, Choza immediately moved in his path and swung his bow staff at him. Hideyoshi was surprised. He exclaimed, "So fast." Hideyoshi didn't expect Choza to be as quick as him. He raised his arms in a defensive position to block the attack. He managed to block it, but Choza's physical strength was much higher. He was hurled backwards. Hideyoshi's expression became grim as he realized, "He sent me flying towards the Hokage." Hideyoshi flipped in the air and landed on his 2 feet as he slid backwards while weaving hand signs. He turned around and continued his way towards Hiruzen as he screamed, "Don't underestimate me." Wind release blade of wind jutsu. He extended his index and middle fingers on both his hands as wind flew rapidly around them. Fujin grabbed his sword and was about to intervene when he noticed Hiruzen's actions. Hiruzen had extended the same 2 fingers on his right hand. Wind began moving around them as well. Hideyoshi's eyes widened. He immediately launched dozens of wind blades at Hiruzen. Hiruzen merely responded by launching an equal number of wind blades. Fujin watched with widened eyes as Hiruzen's wind blades neutralized each and every wind blade launched by Hideyoshi perfectly. He muttered, "What the hell?" However, the one who was most shocked was Hideyoshi. He thought, "How can this be? This is my most skilled jutsu. I have trained it for over 2 decades. How can he be more skilled at it than me?" Unfortunately, he wouldn't receive any answers. As soon as his jutsu ran out, Hiruzen disappeared and appeared in front of him and tapped his forehead with the same 2 fingers. A seal appeared on his forehead. Hideyoshi was horrified. He tried using his chakra, but he felt that his body had no chakra. He tried moving, but he couldn't move a muscle. He wanted to speak, but not a word left his mouth. Fujin's eyes twitched as he saw this scene. He thought, "What the fuck? Wind jutsus is what I excel in, but his control and precisions far exceed mine. Even I wouldn't have been able to neutralize that attack this way. At the most, I'd have overwhelmed it by pouring more chakra into the jutsu. I can understand his taijutsu being better than mine, but despite all my training, his speed still exceeds mine, and by such a huge degree, I won't be able to keep up with him in a head-on fight. And that Juin jutsu, what a freak, sigh. The last mission increased my confidence a lot. I thought I'd be able to at least run away from S-rank ninjas, but now, luckily I didn't challenge Rasa. If I didn't manage to get reverse summoned in time, I'd probably be buried deep within the desert had I challenged him. Looks like there is still a considerable distance between my level and the S-rank despite my high chakra." Hiruzen's little display gave Fujin a reality check. Though he relied a lot on his skill with wind jutsus, his biggest reliance was his speed. The ability to keep up and run away from any opponent was what he felt was the most important skill for a ninja. However, Hiruzen's speed shook Fujin's confidence in his speed. While Fujin was comparing himself with what Hiruzen showed, Hideyoshi's life flashed in his eyes multiple times. Hiruzen noticed the range of emotions in his eyes and said, "Don't worry, you won't be able to move." He placed his right hand on his head. Chakra flowed from his palm into Hideyoshi's brain. Hideyoshi felt immense pain as Hiruzen began reading his memories. He wanted to scream in pain, but the seal didn't allow him to make any sound. In the next 7 minutes, Hiruzen read most of Hideyoshi's memories. He let go of his head as he analyzed. "I see, Sunagakure has already started creating plans to target the nobles from our country. This was their first squad. Unfortunately for Suna, they decided to attack this camp to do more damage to Konoha. Furthermore, their plans have a lot of inefficiencies." Hiruzen walked away from him and instructed, "Kill him and get rid of all the bodies." The 4 amber guards nodded and got to work. They knew that Hiruzen meant that there should be no proof of these bodies ever being here. Fujin, Homura and Choza immediately realized the reason for this. If Hideyoshi was left alive, then Suna would demand him back, and it would be difficult for Konoha to refuse that request, though Konoha could inform about these matters to the Wind Daimyo. It would deteriorate the relationship between the 2 countries. Konoha wanted to maintain the alliance with Suna, even if it was just on paper, so keeping Hideyoshi, whether dead or alive, was disadvantageous for Konoha. However, Fujin couldn't help but think, "I killed 1 elite Junin and several Junins from Suna during my promotion mission, and now another one of the elite Junins has died along with 4 Junins. Their losses just keep piling up. At this rate, will they even have the necessary forces to launch the Konoha Crush?" Fujin suddenly became worried. He thought, "Shit, if the Konoha Crush doesn't happen, then a lot of future events will change. I might not have much advantage of knowing the future if that happens. Say, I hope Rasa doesn't get too intimidated." Hiruzen read Kanam's memories as well to gain any information that he could. He was disposed of the same way as well. Hiruzen analyzed the information and concluded, these two don't have all the information. I'll have to arrange strong patrol squads in the country. In addition, the security of Fire Capital has to be increased. Chapter 291 Lying with a straight face. He quickly made some plans and let out a sigh. This is getting very complicated. I'll leave the planning and operations to Shikaku. He said, we are leaving now. We need to get to Konoha quickly. He looked at the ninjas who were deployed in that patrol camp and instructed, keep up your good work, clear all traces of the battles here, and don't tell anyone about what happened today. The ninjas immediately nodded and said, yes, Lord Hokage. Hiruzen nodded and instructed Fujin, create shadow clones and sweep through the area. Check if there are any suspicious squads in a 20-kilometer radius. Fujin replied, all right. He focused on his chakra. His chakra began splitting into two. One had 40% of his maximum chakra, while the other had around 59. The 40% part of his chakra suddenly disappeared, and 20 shadow clones appeared around him. They immediately dispersed in separate directions. Hiruzen left the camp along with Fujin, Choza, Homura and the Ambo guards, without waiting for Fujin's clones to finish the search. While moving, Hiruzen's eyes landed on Fujin. He analyzed, I didn't see him much in action. Seeing that they were from Suna, I had to ensure that they don't die so that I could read memories with better accuracy. Still, just those few attacks show why he was so successful in Suna. With good control over wind manipulation and the ability to take advantage of every little opening, he ends up killing his opponent before they have a chance to display their prowess. Unlike Hiruzen, Homura wasn't aware of Fujin's capabilities. He was shocked at how good he was. He looked at Fujin and analyzed, this boy, he is very good, though I can't say for sure how strong he is. After all, he killed that censor using a sneak attack by using the distraction that Choza created. But the ability to take advantage of such small opportunities is far more valuable than strength. After all, we are ninjas. The ability to kill is way more important than the strength we possess. If a genin kills a Kage by injuring him with a poisoned needle or kunai, then that genin is far more valuable than a Kage who sits in his village during a war. Besides, he is still just 14. He can gain strength in the future. I can see why Hiruzen is putting such emphasis on this boy. He could become just as capable as Kakashi, though I still don't see why he wants to make him a negotiator. Fujin suddenly gained several memories. He said, my clones didn't find anyone else. It looks like those 6 were traveling alone. Hiruzen replied, all right, good work. The group rushed towards Konoha without exchanging many words. By the time the sun rose, they had reached Konoha. Choza and Fujin left while Homura accompanied Hiruzen into his office. He wanted to know why Suna attacked Konoha. One of the Ambo guards left to call Shikaku. After half an hour, Shikaku walked into the office while grumbling, why are they back so quickly, and why did he disturb my sleep? I have barely managed to sleep half my usual time in the last month. Shikaku noticed Homura in the room. Hiruzen said, it's good to see you up so early. Shikaku, we have new intel, come sit. Shikaku's eyes twitched on hearing Hiruzen's words. He reluctantly sat down and asked, what intel did you get? Homura said, on our route back, the patrol camp we stayed at was attacked by Suna ninjas. Hiruzen added, I read their memories. It looks like Suna is planning several more attacks, though it might be delayed a bit after we eliminated the first squad. Hiruzen informed Shikoku about the details of the attack and the intel he gained by reading memories. Shikoku's expression became serious as he analyzed the situation. After a few minutes he said, Hideyoshi didn't have enough information. We don't know who will be in the other squads, and we don't know what routes they will take. Though it is doubtful that they would send more elite Junins, we should operate assuming that they send elite Junins to avoid getting caught off guard and taking unnecessary losses. Creating more patrol squads will be a waste of manpower. Instead, we should plant some Ambu and a couple of elite Junins in the Land of Fire. They can make a move after the Suna ninjas expose themselves. This wouldn't raise any suspicions, and once we have driven away a few Suya squads, we will ambush their rendezvous point that Hideyoshi was told about. We could disguise as Hideyoshi's squad to catch them off guard. Hiruzen thought for a bit and nodded. All right, let's do this. However, Homura frowned and asked, but why is Suna attacking us? We are allies. Shikaku knew that Hiruzen hadn't informed others about Fujin's actions. In fact, his mission report was already destroyed and replaced with a fake one. He said, the recent events in the Land of Wind probably alarmed them. Whoever it was, they did a good job of directing the suspicions at us. especially by burning the food storage facilities. That provides a lot of advantages to us, so some responses to be expected. Homura frowned. He was very suspicious, and thought, these two are definitely hiding something from me, at least Hiruzen is. The incidents in the Land of Wind are just too favorable for us for it to be done by Iwa or Kumo. He said, that isn't acceptable. If it has nothing to do, then we should engage in a dialogue and make them stop their actions. Otherwise we would suffer as well, just like how Suna did. Hiruzen rejected his idea by replying, I just killed one of their elite Junins. If you want to talk now, we would have to pay a big price. Besides, considering how much they suffered, it seems impossible that they didn't catch anyone. Though Suna is incompetent, they shouldn't be that useless. I'm sure they already know who the culprit is and are just using the opportunity to create trouble for us. Regardless, the situation is very beneficial for us. We just need to kill some of their ninjas. Once they realize how high the risks they have to take for these attacks are, they will stop immediately. Homura became quiet. He thought, his words make perfect sense. But I know that something isn't right. Sai, I don't think he will tell us the truth. He looked at Shikaku, but Shikaku looked like he would close his eyes and fall asleep at any second. Having seen Hiruzen's ability to bullshit for so many years, Shikaku didn't feel anything at the lies he made up. Homura couldn't find anything from Shikaku's expression. He nodded and said, all right, I'll take my leave. Since he wasn't getting any information, Homura left. Hiruzen instructed, along with this situation, also decide which ninjas to deploy in the new camps that we have to build along the borders of tea and noodle countries. If needed, you can temporarily move them to assault any Suna infiltrators. Shikaku nodded and left. After closing the door, he sighed and muttered, why does my workload keep increasing, and we aren't even at war? Shikaku immediately got to work. Unlike Shikoku, Fujin had no responsibilities. He rested for a day and got back to his training. His clones worked hard to master more seals. They had already learned all the new symbols that the scrolls had, and they had mastered all seals in 18 of the 58 scrolls. As for Fujin, he recalled how magnanimous Hiruzen was and absorbed the energy in the wind crystals faster than ever. After a week, he was finally called to the Amber headquarters. Fujin walked to the headquarters while thinking, looks like they finally arranged subordinates for me. Still, I haven't led a squad since the Uchiha massacre. I hope I haven't gotten too rusty. Granted, the first missions will be easier ones. I can't wait to make them police the streets, ha ha ha. When Fujin reached the headquarters, he saw Eagle, the commander of all Amber ninjas. Waiting for him, Eagle said, follow me. Fujin nodded and followed him to a room. On entering, he noticed 3 masked Amber in the room. One wore a cat mask with 3 red stripes. She had long straight purple hair. Another wore a dog mask. He had golden hair. The last one had short black hair. Unlike the other 2, he was much younger and wore a sparrow mask. Eagle said, he will be your team captain. Hawk, I'll leave them in your care. He disappeared from the room, leaving Fujin alone with his new subordinates. Chapter 292 Subordinates. Fujin looked at his new teammates and thought, I didn't think Yuga would be assigned under me. Shouldn't she be a part of Yamato's unit? Looks like my unit isn't made of newly selected ninjas. Makes sense, I guess, considering how many people Hiruzen recruited 2 years ago. He removed his mask and took a seat and said, take seats, make yourself comfortable and introduce yourself. I'm Suzuki Fujin. You can call me Captain or Hawk. No, Turtle. Fujin tossed his hawk mask in the open box that contained dozens of masks while thinking, the hawk mask along with my swords is just too well known. Fame is not good for amber missions. I need a new disguise. Fujin had seen a turtle mask at the top of the box. Wind suddenly began flowing in the closed room. The turtle mask soon began floating in the air and moved towards Fujin. Fujin grabbed it and said, I specialize in wind release and swordsmanship. I prefer ranged battles and using hit and run tactics. Yugo and the blonde Ambu weren't surprised or impressed by Fujin's display. However, the third Ambu was quite impressed. He thought, that's cool. Yugo removed her mask and said, I'm Yuzuki Yugo. My codename is Nico. I am currently training in various sword styles. I specialize in wind release as well. In addition, I can also use a few fire and water jutsus. And I can sense up to a distance of 800 meters. As for the battle, I don't have any preference for tactics. I can adjust to any battle style. Fujin raised his eyebrow and thought, apart from water jutsus, her skill set is almost identical to mine. At the same time, Yugo wondered, when Lord Heikage said that I could learn from my new captain, did he mean that I could improve my sword styles and wind jutsus by observing him? The blonde ninja removed his dog mask and said, I am Yamanaka Fumito. My codename is Inu. I specialize in Yamanaka clan secret techniques. I can sense up to 1700 meters. My affinity is wind as well. My secondary nature is lightning. I prefer hiding and sneak attacking the enemies. Fujin nodded. Fumito looked to be as old as Yuga. Considering that they would have been ninjas for close to a decade, it wasn't surprising that they decided to learn more than one element. Finally, the last ninja removed his mask. A smile was plastered on his face. Fujin felt that his face looked familiar, but he didn't recognize him at first glance. However, soon Fujin was surprised. He thought, this guy became an Ambo? Though Fujin didn't show it, he was genuinely surprised. The ninja introduced himself. I am Handa Buniro. My codename is Sparrow, my affinity is water, and I am learning wind jutsus as my second nature. I have also learnt the basics of being a sensor, but currently, I can only sense up to 80 meters. As for combat style, I don't have any fixed style, but I prefer to drown my enemies from a distance. Fujin nodded and analyzed. Yuga and Fumito have wind as their primary element, whereas Buniro has it as his secondary element. In addition, all three are sensors, and Yuga also uses a sword. Looks like my team will specialize in hitting from a distance or assassinations, instead of engaging in combat directly. But considering all the elements, the team does cover all elements. These three just miss the earth element, but Hiruzen and Eagle should know that I can use earth jutsu. The only major issue is Buniro. How did he go from academy to Ambu in just 2 years? Though Fujin also managed to do the same. His circumstances were completely different. Fujin had learnt the basic exercises of chakra control during his first year in the academy. He had graduated at the top of his year and could already use 2 elements. After graduating, he was guided seriously by an elite Junin and even received training from Hiruzen. As for Buniro, he hadn't even tried the tree climbing exercise until a few months before the graduation exam. Fujin wondered, was he trained seriously by someone as well? Regardless, though this feat is impressive, his chakra is far lower than Yuga and Fumito. His strength should be weaker as well. It makes the squad unbalanced. Did Hiruzen force him into my squad just because I taught him in the past? Fujin thought for a bit, but couldn't think of any other reason. He asked, good, do all 3 of you know the rules and protocols of Ambo? All 3 nodded. Yuga and Fumito were already a part of Ambu, whereas Buniro was informed by Eagle. Fujin looked at Yuga and asked, you know where the Ambu training ground 9 is, right? Yuga nodded. Fujin said, good, take Inu and Sparrow there. I'll come in half an hour. Use that time to discuss how to coordinate properly with each other and form decent teamwork. When I come, you 3 will fight me. Yuga, Fumito and Buniro were surprised. Fumito thought, he will take all of us on at the same time. Sigh, why did I get such a young captain who is so arrogant? If it wasn't for my horrible luck, I'd have been an Ambu captain myself. Buniro wondered, does he think that I'm as weak as I was 2 years ago? Only Yuga looked at him meaningfully. She and Fumito walked out while Buniro followed them. Fujin saw them leave. As soon as they were out of sight, he flickered and appeared in front of Eagle. Eagle wasn't surprised to see Fujin and asked, do you need something? Fujin nodded and replied, yeah, give me their files. I want to know everything I can about my team. Eagle nodded and handed Fujin 3 files and said, feel free to read but leave them here. The information regarding the Ambu can't be allowed to exist anywhere else. Fujin nodded. He opened Yuga's file and began reading. After he was done, he concluded, she is good. She was first part of Kakashi's squad and then Yamato's squad. And she has already begun her training under height. But if all the information here is true, then her power is already equivalent to an Ambu captain. Why wasn't she allowed to take the promotion mission? Fujin began reading Fumito's file. He was surprised as he discovered, I see, he has already tried a promotion mission but failed to pass. His power should be at the Junin level as well. No wonder I saw disdain in his eyes when I said that I will take on all 3 of them myself. Fujin placed his file down and began reading Buniro's file. This was the one he was most interested in reading. As he read, Fujin thought, although I guided the 5 of them, I didn't have much expectations from any of them. At most I expected them to reach low Chunin levels. After all, none of them had the talent or determination to get stronger. Guess I was wrong. I wonder what happened to the remaining 4. He read all his information and analyzed. I see, he and Tatsuya were placed in the same squad under a Junin who took an interest in guiding them properly, and he is quite hard-working as well. He managed to become a Chunin around 6 months ago, but he was the only one from his squad who got promoted. Not bad. No wonder he managed to join the Ambu. but his strength doesn't compare to the other two and is probably average among Chunnings, though he is 6-7 years younger than the other two. Still, Fujin looked up at Eagle. Though he couldn't see his face due to the mask, he could see that Eagle's eyes were glued on him. He thought, I don't understand my team. One is ready to be promoted to Amber Captain, one has failed the promotion mission, and the third is a newbie. What does he aim to achieve by giving me such an imbalanced team? Eagle asked. Is there any issue? Fujin handed over the files and said, No, I do have a question though. Since my team is newly formed and has a new member, we will have to police the village for a few months. Right, Eagle was confused by the question. He replied, No, who told you that? You will be assigned field missions right away. Fujin asked, Wouldn't that be risky with an inexperienced ninja? Eagle replied, The other two of your subordinates are quite strong. And Lord Hokage believed in your strength as well, so I believe that his safety wouldn't be an issue. Fujin replied, All right. He left while thinking. As I expected, Hiruzen was behind such a weird team. Though Eagle's logic makes sense, it is very flawed. Knowing Hiruzen, he should have other motives. Unfortunately, I can't guess them. While Fujin was thinking, his new subordinates had discussed and planned for a few minutes before stopping and waiting for Fujin. Yugo and Fumito were sitting in a meditative position, while Buniro had a frown on his face. Chapter 293 Establishing Clout. Buniro looked at Yugo and Fumito who were just sitting in the training ground. He asked with a frown on his face, Shouldn't we discuss more strategies and work on our teamwork? Yugo and Fumito just talked about their abilities and asked Buniro to do the same. After knowing everyone's abilities, Fumito formed a very basic plan and Yugo agreed without any arguments. Buniro wondered, What the hell, this is even worse than when we were put in a Genin squad. Aren't they supposed to be experienced Ambu ninjas? Fumito shook his head and replied, We won't be able to improve our teamwork much in 30 minutes, so it's pointless. Just ensure that we don't get in each other's way while fighting, and we will be good. After all, our opponent is someone who has just been promoted to Amber Captain. Buniro wasn't convinced. He said, but Yugo cut him off and said, He is right. Captain could have given us more time to prepare to form better teamwork. But we aren't Genins. As an Ambu, we may spontaneously be asked to team up with other Ambu ninjas, or other Ambu teams, or even operate solo. So we have to be prepared to form good coordination with any other ninja. Consider this as a part of your training. Buniro thought for a bit and replied, All right. He sat down as well and joined his new teammates. Yuga's mind wandered as she recalled the meeting she had the previous day. One day ago, Yuga appeared in the Hokage's office. Only Hiruzen and Shikaku were present in the room. She respectfully asked, Lord Hokage, what are your orders? Hiruzen waited for a few seconds and said, Yugo, your Ambu team will be changed. I'm placing you in a different Ambu unit. Yugo was surprised. Her eyes lit up. She asked, Am I getting promoted to Ambu Captain, Lord Hokage? Hiruzen smiled and said, No, not yet. We have observed your improvements and you have been performing very well, but it's not yet the time for your promotion. Yugo became silent. She was confused. She thought, Captain Yamato said that I'm ready for the promotion mission. Why did Lord Hokage say the opposite? And why am I being shifted? Hiruzen continued, This change will be beneficial for you. Your new captain will be Suzuki Fujin. I believe you will learn a lot from him. Shikaku handed her a file that contained some basic information regarding Fujin, but didn't mention anything about his abilities or mission record. Yugo glanced through the information. A look of surprise appeared behind her mask as Yugo noticed Fujin's age. Hiruzen explained, He is quite strong, but is very young, and he tends to go a bit extreme during the missions. While working with him, you will also be responsible to stop him if you feel that he is doing something that will have very adverse implications. Though Hiruzen was impressed by what Fujin did in his promotion mission, neither he nor Shikaku wanted to see him do anything of that scale once again. His actions had almost broken the delicate balance of the ninja world. Hiruzen wanted the current peace to extend for as long as it could. Yugo was surprised by his words. She asked, By stopping, do you mean? She didn't complete her question. Hiruzen replied, No, just talk with him. He is very reasonable. He is still your captain, so you aren't allowed to fight or backstab him. Yugo sighed in relief. She didn't want to attack her comrade. She nodded and said, All right, I'll do my best. Hiruzen smiled again and said, If you keep up your good work, I'll allow you to take the promotion mission after a year. Yugo replied with determination in her voice, Thank you. I won't disappoint you. She left the office. Shikaku watched her leave with a serious face. Hiruzen had informed him of his plans. He analyzed. That's strange, she is strong and experienced enough to be promoted, yet she wasn't. He recalled the names of the ambo that would be assigned to Fujin and began analyzing all information. Suddenly it clicked. He looked at Hiruzen with surprise as he realized, I see, Yugo is confirmed to be an amber captain. So is Fumito. As for Buniro, Hiruzen said that Fujin had guided him in the academy. With his talent, he should reach the Junin level as well. He asked, you are planning to increase Fujin's clout? Hiruzen wasn't surprised that Shikaku figured it out. It was the main reason why he had called him there. He nodded and replied, yes, though his strength is impressive, his reputation is almost non-existent. He might be more famous in Kumo than in our village. His relationships aren't much either. The only one with significant influence that is close to him is Rinjuro, even in the younger generation. The only ones close to him are Hyuga Hoka and Senju Teru, though they are talented. They won't be anywhere near enough to support him in the future. Compared with Kakashi, he is highly lacking in both aspects. Shikoku nodded. By giving Fujin 3 talented subordinates, Hiruzen had set up an easy path for him to gain influence. Yugo and Fumito will remember that Fujin was their captain for some time. As for Buniro, he was guided by Fujin from the time he was in the academy, so he would become another one to support him, and since Yugo and Fumito would be promoted very soon, Fujin would be given newer subordinates to increase his influence in the Ambu. Shikoku asked, are you confident that he can become a Hokage? Hiruzen shrugged and said, it's tough to say, but there isn't any harm in helping him. If he lives up to our expectations, then he could compete with Kakashi for my seat in the future, and since neither of them is hungry for political power, it shouldn't create any internal conflict in the village. Shikoku nodded and said, I agree, but increasing his reputation will be a bit problematic. Both the Kumo incident and this mission can't be revealed to the public. We will have to create more opportunities in the future like we did for Kakashi. Hiruzen replied, it's fine, he is only 14. Let him stay in the dark and keep accumulating his strength. When the time is right, we can create multiple opportunities for him to gain fame. Even the Ambu commander post can be handed over to him if need be. Shikoku nodded. Raising someone's reputation wasn't very difficult for them, especially if that someone was worthy of that reputation. He discussed the Sunagakure matter with Hiruzen and left the office. Alone in his office, Hiruzen looked at a scroll lying on his desk. There were many scrolls on his desk at all times, so Shikoku didn't pay any attention to that scroll. Hiruzen thought, I was initially planning to give Fujin a couple more months off. Learning advanced Fuin Jutsu is difficult and very time-consuming, but with shadow clones, he should be able to do the symbols and the easier seals in 3 months. But, recalling the contents of the scroll, Hiruzen shivered involuntarily. He thought, I thought I had hinted it to him quite clearly, but why did he increase his consumption of wind crystals? Did he get the wrong message somehow? Don't tell me he thought that my buying more wind crystals from other countries was a message to keep using as many as he wants. Say, this kid is too good at giving me headaches. If I let him be free for another couple of months, Konoha might actually begin running out of wind crystals, and that would invite scrutiny from the council. Though I might be able to handle it, it will bring a lot of unnecessary attention to Fujin, and his access to them in the future will be limited heavily. So I can only send him on missions and limit the amount of time he has to spend in the training facilities. Present Fujin waited for 30 minutes and appeared at the training ground. Yuga, Fumito and Buniro got up and got ready. Fujin looked at them and said, in order to cooperate properly, we need to know where everyone's strengths lie and what everyone's weaknesses are. There won't be any killing or maiming in this fight, but give it your all. You won't stand a chance against me if you hold back. Though Fumito was a bit skeptical, he planned to give it his all. Yugo and Buniro also became serious. He picked up a stone and tossed it in the air and said, the fight begins once the stone hits the ground. Yugo grabbed her sword, Fumito grabbed a few shurikens and Buniro held 3 shurikens in each hand. As soon as the stone hit the ground, Yugo rushed forward with her sword, while Buniro launched all 6 shurikens at Fujin. Meanwhile, Fumito stayed back and weaved hand signs to take advantage of any openings Fujin provided. The 6 shurikens ripped through the air and hit Fujin's body. Buniro's eyes widened. He thought, so easy. However, he saw the shurikens passing through his body and Fujin's image dispersed a bit before dissipating completely. He asked, when did he create a clone? Fumito's expression was serious. He said, that wasn't a clone. It was an afterimage. Fumito didn't see Fujin move at all. He closed his eyes and activated his chakra field. All his previous disdain was tossed out of his mind. Yuga was serious as well. She only saw the general direction of where Fujin had gone. She turned her head to her right and shouted. Incoming chapter 294. Displaying his might, on their right, a gigantic dragon made of wind was flying towards them. Yuga immediately jumped forward and out of its way. Fumito sensed the attack as well. Only Buniro was caught off guard. Fumito grabbed his arm and jumped in the opposite direction. Hiding among the trees, Fujin observed their movements and thought, not bad, I was expecting Fumito to dodge by himself. The dragon suddenly turned towards Fumito and Buniro and chased after them. Fumito let Buniro's arm go and said, use a water jutsu to stop it. He began weaving hand signs himself while moving backwards. Buniro also did the same. Just when the wind dragon was about to crash into them, Buniro released his jutsu. Water release water wall jutsu, and a wall of water appeared in front of the dragon. Fumito immediately launched his jutsu as well. Lightning release lightning net jutsu. Lightning began flowing through the water wall, and a blue net could be seen sparkling inside it. Buniro's eyes widened in shock. He created a perfect combination attack on the first try. At the same time, Yugo traced the wind dragon's path and tracked Fujin's location. She tried approaching him sneakily, but Fujin spotted her immediately. Since stealth was of no use, Yugo approached him openly and jumped in the air. She swung her swords in a circular motion, leaving a trace of afterimages behind. Hazy moonlight, Yugo moved at a remarkable speed, forming a blur as she closed the distance between her and Fujin. In the blink of an eye, in one swift motion, she unleashed a slashing strike aimed directly at Fujin's neck. Though her sword movements were irregular and her speed very high, Fujin had no issues in seeing her actions clearly. A sword appeared in his hand. He raised it just in time, meeting Yugo's blade with a resounding clash. Yugo had expected Fujin to stop her attack. She intended to use the impact to halt her momentum and swiftly transition into her next series of attacks. Yet, to her surprise, she found herself unable to feel the expected resistance from Fujin's forceful strike. Instead of blocking, Fujin parried her blow and sent it veering to his right. The sword harmlessly passed by him. Yugo, carried by the momentum of her own strike, continued her movement and found herself dangerously close to Fujin's flank. In one fluid and precise motion, Fujin continued the natural flow of his sword and slashed her thigh, cutting the straps of the weapon pouch attached to her right leg. Yugo stopped a few meters behind him. Her right leg had a shallow sword cut causing it to bleed. She turned around to look at Fujin. Shock could be seen in her eyes as she thought, he parried my attack. But how? Even Height Senpai never managed to do this. He could only dodge or block my attack. A bit away, Fumito and Buniro were able to stop the wind dragon with their combination jutsu. However, before they could relax, they heard, that's impressive. Both immediately jumped forward and turned around and saw Fujin standing with two balls of wind in his palms. Fujin's shadow clone fired two wind explosion spheres at Fumito and Buniro. Neither had sufficient time to use a jutsu, so both of them jumped out of the way. Though they dodged, the spheres exploded and sent sharp winds flying in all directions. Both received several minor cuts on their chest, abdomen and arms. Both had frowns on their faces. Fumito realized, he can hide his chakra perfectly. I didn't sense him at all. If this was a mission, we would have died. Buniro was dumbfounded. He thought, I got injured by a rank T jutsu. I thought that I had reduced the difference between us. But now, how much is he holding back to fight with just C and D rank jutsus? Despite their emotions, both attacked immediately. Fumito shouted, distract him, I'll get him with mind-body switch jutsu. He extended his arms towards Fujin's clone and waited for an opportunity. Buniro ran towards Fujin's clone while weaving hand signs quickly. Water release water shuriken jutsu. Dozens of water shurikens appeared in front of Buniro and flew at Fujin's clone. He dodged them while thinking, since when did Amber start having ninjas that shout out their tactics? Besides, even though that jutsu is overpowered, it is useless without the aid of Anara or excessive support. He dodged a few dozen water shurikens, but more kept appearing around Buniro and launched at him continuously. The clone's eyes began glowing and landed on Buniro. Buniro was continuously releasing his chakra. The chakra in his body was moving in the same way it did after he weaved the hand signs. Fujin's clone analyzed. I see, though he needed hand signs for the first time, he has learnt to control his chakra well enough to keep spamming that jutsu, without the need for repeating or maintaining any hand seals. My previous analysis of just an average tune-in was wrong. He should be able to perform this jutsu without any hand seals very soon. Fumito observed Fujin's clone moving around at high speeds. He had no chance to use his jutsu, however, he didn't mind and waited for an opportunity. A bit away, Fujin and Yugo were clashing with their swords. Neither used any jutsu. Yugo was breathing heavily. In just a few minutes of clashing, there were dozens of cuts on her body. On the contrary, there wasn't a single cut on Fujin's body, behind her mask. Yugo had a bitter smile. She muttered to herself, "I understand what Lord Hokage meant. I have used every style, every dance that I know, but he countered all my attacks without using any sword style. No wonder he was promoted to Amber Captain at such a young age. I'm not even worthy enough to make him fight seriously." Knowing that competing with swords will be pointless, Yugo sheathed her sword and made a hand seal, a multi-shadow clone jutsu. 3 shadow clones appeared next to her. Fujin saw them weaving hand signs and sighed. "I should avoid sparring in the future. My natural instincts have completely been honed to kill. All 3 of them have provided me with so many openings that it has been a challenge to restrain myself. Anyways, I have seen enough. Time to end this." Yugo's clones completed their hand seals. Wind release great breakthrough jutsu. Fire release fireball jutsu. Fujin saw a giant fireball that was being deconstructed into flames and spreading along the wind, heading towards him. He immediately moved out of the range of the attack. However, the last clone and Yugo followed him. Wind release air bullet jutsu, water release water bullet jutsu. Both shot a dozen bullets each at Fujin. However, Fujin rapidly moved towards them, while dodging the bullets with ease and leaving multiple afterimages behind. Yugo tried targeting Fujin's path but was unsuccessful. Fujin appeared behind her as chakra gathered on his palms. Yugo and her clone tried moving away while grabbing their swords. However, Fujin hit their abdomens with his palms. Yugo's shadow clone dispersed due to the damage. Yugo herself was sent flying and slammed into a tree. The damage caused her remaining clones to dispel as well. On the other side, Buniro realized that water shurikens won't help him resolve the situation. He weaved a few hand seals quickly. Water release raging waves jutsu. Buniro supercharged the jutsu by pouring most of his chakra into it. He spewed a large amount of water that rushed towards Fujin's clone like a giant waterfall. Fumito was waiting for such a move. Lightning appeared on his palms, and a beam was launched into the water that Buniro released, electrifying it. Fujin's clone noticed the combination attack and smiled. Not bad. He bluffed when he said he wanted to use the mind-body switch jutsu. He was waiting for Buniro to try and drown me. Looks like I won't have to worry about them dying easily. Oh well, time to establish my prestige in this team. The electrified water wave appeared in front of him. Fujin's clone refined his chakra instantly and attacked. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. Fujin's clone exhaled very strong winds. It clashed with the combination jutsu and overpowered it instantly. The electrified water was sent flying towards where Yugo's clones had lit a fire. The winds created deep scars in the ground. Many trees were cut, while a few were uprooted. Buniro created a water wall to protect himself. However, it kept crumbling at every second. He desperately put all his chakra into the wall to ensure that it protected it. He gritted his teeth and thought, "Fujin is this strong? This is crazy. Luckily this attack isn't targeted at me. Otherwise, even if there were 100 of me, we would have died." Fumito escaped into the ground without any hesitation. He was horrified by the attack. He cursed, "What the fuck? How the hell can a 14-year-old use such an insanely strong attack? That too with just half his chakra. Amber Captain my ass. His level should be far beyond it." Shota 295 doing paperwork with enthusiasm. Yugo got back on her feet and grabbed her sword. However, Fujin raised his palm and said, "Enough, that's sufficient combat for today." Yugo nodded and sheathed her sword again. Suddenly she looked behind her. At that instant a strong wind blew through the area. Numerous branches were broken. Yugo struggled to keep standing. A massive amount of water suddenly landed on the fire that was spreading, dousing it and covering the area with steam. After the winds passed, Yugo asked, "What is that?" Fujin replied, "Looks like my clone decided to end the battle. Let's go and check on them." Just like Fumito, Yugo also sensed the fight happening at the other place, but she was still surprised that Fujin could unleash such destruction with just a clone. Both flickered towards where Fumito and Buniro were. The winds had finally come down. Fujin and Yugo saw Buniro sitting on the ground while breathing heavily. Despite wearing a mask, they could see that he was scared. Sensing them, Fumito climbed out of the ground. He looked at Fujin. This time, there was no disdain in his eyes. Instead, there was admiration and respect. Fujin looked at his clone who dispelled himself in response and passed all the memories to Fujin. Fujin said, I have seen enough for now. We will end the fight here. Neither Buniro nor Fumito objected. They didn't want to be on the receiving end of such a devastating jutsu again. Fujin looked at Buniro and said, take a good rest. Your chakra levels are very low. Buniro nodded and replied, I will. Fujin looked at Yugo and Fumito and said, though the cuts on you are shallow, get them healed as well. We will meet back in our room after 3 days. I'm not sure when we will be assigned missions or which missions we will be assigned. He looked at Buniro and explained, generally speaking, easier missions are assigned when a new Amber joins the unit. But Yugo and Fumito have a lot of experience, so we may be given tougher missions to start off, so be prepared. Buniro nodded again and said with confidence, don't worry, Captain, I'm prepared. Fujin nodded and said, good, let's meet later. He flickered away, leaving his 3 subordinates together. Buniro said, I never thought that the gap between an Ambu and an Ambu captain would be so strong. Fumito shook his head and said, you're overthinking. He is just too strong. I don't think my old captain would stand a chance against him. I wonder how he trained to be so strong at just 14, and why isn't he famous? I never heard of him until today, Yugo said. I guess he did missions that were classified, so he never got any credit for them. Still, I didn't think that I'd be so outclassed in swordplay. I'll be returning to my training. Fumito nodded and said, I will be doing the same. Buniro, after you heal and rest for some time, visit the training facilities. Instead of resting at home, meditate in the water training rooms. Considering how strong our captain is, our missions might be very difficult. Buniro replied, all right, thank you for the tip, Fumito-senpai. The 3 visited Konoha Hospital before going their own ways. Meanwhile, Fujin had created 60 shadow clones to continue learning the seals while he went into the wind training room to meditate. While meditating, he analyzed, Hiruzen gave me quite a strong squad. Yugo's swordplay is as good as I expected, but her skills with elemental jutsus were a surprise. As for Fumito, despite being a Yamanaka, his skills with lightning jutsus and his ability to form combination jutsus with allies is very impressive, and he didn't show any wind jutsu, which is supposed to be his main element, but I guess that is to be expected. After all, advancing to Junin rank with just the Yamanaka secret techniques is extremely rare, and it is even more difficult to become an Amber captain. Buniro is the biggest surprise though rank A and S jutsu seem cool in a battle, the most effective jutsus are the ones that can be spammed or affect a huge area. With water shuriken and raging waves, he covers both these areas, though he will have to improve his movement and reaction speed, but that will improve as he goes on difficult missions. While Fujin was analyzing his team, one person had a very dark face. Sitting in his office, Hiruzen was watching Fujin with his crystal ball. He thought, I gave you a team. Go hang out with them, train with them, and make friends. Why are you back in the training rooms? All that effort only managed to keep him away for an hour. Hiruzen immediately began doing his paperwork while thinking, I need to find a suitable mission for his team, a mission that will keep him away from the village for at least 2 weeks. Takao, who was helping Hiruzen with the paperwork, looked at him in surprise. He wondered, why is Lord Hokage going through his paperwork with such enthusiasm? The next day, Hiruzen sat in his chair while looking at 3 files on his desk. All these 3 files had a mission that needed an elite Junin level ninja to lead. Hiruzen looked at the first file and thought, this mission will be a long-term deployment in the Land of Water. It would have been an excellent mission to test how good Fujin is beyond fighting and killing. Unfortunately, I don't want to risk sending him on another long mission in a major village. I'm afraid he might drag Konoha into that civil war. I'll let Renjuro take care of this. He opened the second file and thought, Suna and Ida are signing some sort of treaty, or at least an understanding in the Land of Birds. Considering the current situation, an alliance between them could prove troublesome for us. However, Onoki should see the bigger picture and realize Kumo's threat. Fortunately, Onoki and Rasa aren't meeting. Still, it will be best if this meeting goes bad, but Suna should be hunting for Fujin. It's not a good idea to send him there. I'll let Eagle lead 3 ambush squads with former root ninjas here. Finally, Hiruzen opened the last file and thought, the leaders of the Ide family and Kagura family from the Land of Grass are going to meet in Ide territory, though very few in the Land of Grass support Aiwa. Ide is one of them. In fact, they are the most significant. They control a large territory along their borders with the Land of Earth. Shikaku believes that this meeting is a trap to kill the head of the Kagura family, who supports Konoha. I'll send Fujin's team here to ensure that the head of the Kagura family returns safely. Since this meeting is supposed to last for over a week, they will be away from the village for at least 2 weeks. Hiruzen decided to assign the mission to the Land of Grass to Fujin's unit. While Hiruzen was picking out a mission, Yugo was training extremely hard along with Height. Sounds of swords clashing could be heard for hours in their training ground. Finally, Height said, "That's enough for today, you need to rest." Yugo stopped and sheathed her sword. Both went out to grab a meal. Height asked, "What's gotten into you today? I haven't even seen you train with such intensity." Yugo sighed and said, "I was assigned to a new team yesterday. The captain arranged a sparring session. He parried my hazy moonlight slash with ease. During the fight, I couldn't land a single hit on him." Height was surprised, even though he was teaching Yugo. Her strength wasn't far from his. He asked, "He sounds very powerful. Who is your new captain?" Yugo replied, "Suzuki Fujin." Height tried recalling, but he couldn't remember anything. He said, "I don't think I've ever heard of him. Is he a veteran ninja who keeps a low profile by hiding in the ambo?" Yugo shook her head and replied, "No, he is just 14 years old. I looked up his information as well, but I didn't find much on him other than the fact that Senju Renjuro was his teacher and that he was the champion during his Chunin exams." Height was shocked. He asked, "A 14-year-old boy defeated you in swordplay. Which style did he use?" Yugo had a bitter smile as she said, "None, I couldn't make him use any." Height was left speechless. He thought, seeing the intensity of her training and her voice, she should have been defeated very thoroughly. He muttered, "A 14-year-old genius who is already an Ambu captain. Looks like our village will have another strong ninja in the future." Yugo nodded. To cheer her up, Height changed the subject and talked about the stuff she liked, just as Hiruzen expected. Fujin's name would slowly be known among the generation that was around 6-8 years older than him. These were the batches that had graduated from academy right after the Third Great Ninja War and hence had very high numbers. Due to this, Fujin's reputation would slowly build up in the village. Chapter 296, a boring mission. On the day Fujin was supposed to meet with his team, an Amber ninja showed up at Fujin's house and passed him a message. Fujin frowned as he thought, "A mission on the very same day we decided to meet? That old fox must be spying with that perverted ball again." Fujin and his team met in their assigned room at the decided time. Fujin looked at his subordinates and asked, "Are any of you still injured?" Everyone shook their heads. Fujin said, "Good, Lord Hokage will assign our first mission today. Follow me." Fujin walked towards the Hokage's building. Yugo, Fumito and Buniro followed him while lost in their own thoughts. Buniro was excited. He thought, "Wow, I never expected that Lord Hokage would assign my first Ambu mission himself. I lucked out by joining Fujin's team. Though I hate Daisaku, I'm so glad that he led us to meet Fujin." Fumito thought, "A mission after such a long time, and this is assigned by Lord Hokage as well. I have to perform properly and show Lord Hokage how capable I am. Only then I will have any chance of becoming an Amber captain." Yugao's eyes were glued to Fujin's back. She was interested in finding out more about Fujin and his skill with the sword. The group soon entered Hiruzen's office. Hiruzen looked at Fujin's turtle mask and asked, "Why aren't you wearing the hawk mask?" Though Hiruzen had seen that Fujin used the turtle mask during sparring, he thought that Fujin would go back to the hawk mask during normal Amber missions. Fujin replied, "That mask gets identified quite quickly, so it kinda loses its purpose." Hiruzen nodded, but he was surprised. Though it was a very logical move, most ninjas wouldn't do it unless the mission demanded a high degree of anonymity. After all, who wouldn't want to build their fame and be well known and respected throughout the ninja world? Hiruzen explained the mission details to Fujin's team. Fujin analyzed the details and thought, "Looks like this will be another long and boring mission." I wanted to continue training. After understanding the details and importance of the mission, Team Fujin left the office. Fujin said, "This will be a 2-3 weeks long mission. Hack up the supplies and meet me at the village gate in 30 minutes. Everyone nodded and dispersed. 20 minutes later, Team Fujin left the village and moved towards the Land of Grass. A day later, they entered a town under disguise. The street was bustling with a high number of people who were going about their lives in a happy mood. Fumito looked around the town and said, "Looks like the Kagawa family is doing a great job. This town is very peaceful and prosperous, and the citizens look happy and content." Yugo nodded and said, "Yeah, their family has a few junins, so the city should be safe in times of peace." The group walked to a location from where they could watch the central mansion very clearly. Fujin's eyes glowed as he saw a bunch of people in the courtyard. They were all flocking around a man in his 50s. He muttered, "So he is Kagawa Noriekyuis, the leader of the Kagawa family." Fujin instructed, "Lord Hokage should have sent him a message mentioning that we will be protecting him from the shadows." So we won't be coming in any direct contact with him unless trouble really happens. According to our information, he will leave the town after 3 days, though unlikely Isa could send an assassin to kill him while in the city, so we will take turns to keep an eye on him. I and Buniro will keep an eye during the day, you two will keep an eye during the night. Yugo replied, all right, we will investigate the city a bit before getting some rest. Fujin nodded. Fumito and Yugo left. Their experience in the Ambo was longer than Fujin's, so he didn't need to give them many instructions. Fujin and Buniro hid themselves while keeping an eye on the mansion. Buniro was a bit nervous. Even though Fujin had guided him earlier, he had provided guidance to the entire group at the same time. He had never interacted with Fujin one-on-one. After some silence, Buniro couldn't hold it anymore and decided to talk. He asked, aren't we in peacetime? Why is Ila trying to create trouble right now? Wouldn't that cause a war? Fujin looked at Buniro and wondered, what would he think if he knew what I did in the Land of Wind? Fujin shook his head and said, the peace you see is only on the surface. In reality, this peacetime is a continuous war between the Ambu of various countries. Every action we take is to increase our advantage in the next war. The village that does this the best while building its military power will likely be the one to win the next war. Buniro was shocked by that answer. His understanding of the world shattered. He muttered, doesn't that mean that the next great war is a certainty, and the peace is only temporary? Fujin nodded, pretty much. Buniro's mood became a bit depressed. He asked, does that mean we will be fighting Awa ninjas for sure this time? Fujin replied, not really. Fighting between Ambo can become very complicated. This might just be a false alarm, or perhaps Iwa faked information so that we would waste our time protecting him while they attack someone else. Only around 30% of the missions actually involve any combat. Life and death battle is even more rare, but it is better to just assume that we will be in a life and death battle in every mission. Buniro nodded and the two became silent once again. After a while, Fujin asked, how are the other 4 doing? Buniro wasn't surprised by the question. He replied, Tatsuya was in the same Genin team as me, though he failed last time. He is participating in the current Chunin exams and has qualified for the last round. He should be able to become a Chunin. Daisaku, Ryama and Buncho were put in the same Genin squad under a Chunin sensei, but we had an argument after the graduation exam, so I don't know much about what happened to them later. I heard that they participated in this Chunin exam but were eliminated in the first round. Fujin was surprised. He asked, you 5 used to be so close to each other. Why did you suddenly argue? Buniro let out a sigh and answered, after you guided us for the last time. They just practiced the 3 basic ninjutsu and didn't train any further. But me and Tatsuya began learning the elemental jutsus and hence gained a better rank in the exam. So after the exam, they blamed us and said that we trained in secret instead of training at the same speed as them. They stopped speaking to us after it. Fujin shook his head in disappointment and replied, I see, that's a bad attitude, but seeing how strong you have grown, I guess it was good for you. Bunjiro nodded. After the argument, he had become very careful in choosing his friends. He only befriended the ones who worked as hard as him and pushed him to be better. He looked at Fujin and secretly sighed in relief. He thought, Daisaku said that he was friends with Fujin from the time that they were very young. I was afraid that Fujin would get angry at me since I abandoned his friend. Luckily he is moral and just, and doesn't blindly side with his friends. Buniro felt that his worries were just. After all, Daisaku was the one who brought their group to Fujin, and he claimed that he had played with Fujin since they were 2 years old. However, Fujin had long forgotten that. After all, he wasn't sure whether he could even consider those memories as his. He had agreed to guide them just as an experiment. Since they didn't have anything to do, Fujin began talking with Buniro about his abilities. Sensing the chance to gain additional guidance, Buniro told him everything about himself. Fujin made a few comments on how he could improve further. After learning everything about him, Fujin thought, looks like Rinjiro isn't the only one who trains his students very seriously. He lucked out by getting a Junin sensei who was dedicated to raising the next generation. Fujin said, your progress is very good. Your control over water jutsus is good, but you should focus on improving your speed. Work on your body flicker jutsu, learn how to do it without making any hand seals, and sustain it for longer distances. When you combine that speed with your sustained water shuriken offense, you will see far better results. Buniro immediately nodded. He recalled how Fujin had disappeared in front of their eyes and his clone had appeared behind them. If he could replicate the same, then his attacks would become much more deadly. Fujin asked, do you use a training seal? Buniro nodded and replied, yes, Sensei bought one for each of us a few days after we became his students. It exerts pressure and resistance up to 125 kg. I can currently handle up to 69% of the maximum pressure. Fujin replied, that's good, focus on maxing it out. When you do, I'll make a new one that can exert pressure up to 500 kg. Buniro said, I will do it. Thanks, Captain. Chapter 297 Ambush. As the sun rose, casting its golden rays upon the town, a sense of anticipation filled the air. Many people gathered along the streets, their faces beaming with excitement and curiosity. Vibrant banners fluttered in the gentle breeze, displaying the emblem of the town and symbols of its proud heritage. The atmosphere was charged with a mixture of admiration and reverence. At the center of the commotion stood Kagawa Noriekyus, adorned in regal attire, radiating an aura of authority. Accompanying him were a retinue of influential nobles and skilled ninjas, each exuding a sense of confidence and purpose. Their presence commanded attention and respect. The townsfolk lined the streets, their eager eyes fixed upon the procession as it made its way through the heart of the town. Cheers and applause erupted from the crowd, echoing through the bustling thoroughfares. Among the crowd stood Fujin and his team, who had disguised themselves. It had been over 3 days since they arrived in the town. Fujin observed the procession and thought, not bad, he converted this meeting into some sort of festival. This will increase his prestige and reputation. And all he had to do was put up a display while leaving the town instead of just leaving silently. Fujin was impressed by Noriekyus's intelligence and methods. Standing next to him, Yugo said, the ninjas wearing those fancy vests are the 8 Junins protecting this town. Even the leader is supposed to be at Junin level. Fumito commented, only 3 of them can barely be considered at the Junin level. The rest, including the leader, are at the Chunin level. Fujin nodded and said, still, it's impressive considering that it is just a town in the land of grass. Not long ago, Fujin had raided the western cities in the land of wind. Of the 5 cities he attacked, 4 didn't have any Junin protecting them. Yugo observed properly and said, the man standing next to Noriekyus is Hoshino Ryochi. He is hiding his chakra but is quite strong. He is said to be among the 3 strongest ninjas in Kasagaka. In the 3rd Great Ninja War, he held back a division of Igawatga to save a city. Fujin nodded. He already knew about him. After recruiting Kasli Shigeki, Fujin began looking for information on talented ninjas outside the 5 major villages. Hoshino Ryochi was among those ninjas. Fujin was wondering how he could recruit him. Unfortunately, Fujin didn't have any means of recruiting or controlling him. He was hoping to get some additional intel on Ryochi during the mission. After passing through the main streets in the town, the entourage left the city and slowly disappeared in the distance. In the mansion, 5 people stood on the balcony and saw the entourage leaving with worry in their eyes. They were the family of Noriekyus. Considering the danger during this trip, Noriekyus hadn't taken any close family members with him. Instead, he had made all preparations to ensure that his son would succeed him if something happened to him. The ones who could pose a threat to his son were all made to accompany him to the meeting. Team Fujin followed the entourage from a distance. Buniro sighed and said, they are moving slower than even the trade caravans. Fumito nodded and said, it's because they have many civilian nobles. Those bunch are the slowest when it comes to moving long distances, but learn to be patient. As an ambo, you may have to spend weeks or even months doing nothing but keeping a watch. Buniro nodded. They followed Kagawa and his group for over a day until they reached the banks of a magnificent river. Across the river was Mikostuo, the westernmost town in the land of grass and the town where the Ide family held power. The river, teeming with turbulent waters, surged with a forceful current. A normal civilian wouldn't be able to swim in the river, fortunately. A sturdy bridge spanning the width of the river was built by the Ide family. The Kagawa family entourage crossed the bridge and was immediately welcomed by the people arranged by the Ide family to greet and welcome the Kagawa family, observing them from a long distance. Yugo said, that bridge looks like the perfect ambushing spot. Other than ninjas, everyone would die immediately. Fujin nodded and said, well, our task is just to ensure that Kagawa Noriekyus stays alive. So if they are ambushed here, focus on killing the ambushers rather than defending. Yugo and Fumito understood Fujin's intentions and nodded. However, Buniro was shocked. He looked at Fujin once again and thought, but wouldn't that mean that every civilian will be dead? There are over 30 people in that group who can't use their chakra. Do we have to be so heartless? Despite his doubts, Buniro didn't question Fujin. As an Ambu, obeying the instructions of his superior without any question was the basic requirement. Otherwise, the success rate of Ambu missions would drop drastically. If he had any questions, he could ask them after the mission was completed. Team Fujin infiltrated Mikosuo and stayed there for the next week while keeping an eye on Kagawa Noriekyus. However, not a single incident happened during that week and no one tried to attack Noriekyus. Finally, after completing all meetings and discussions, the Kagawa family entourage left Mikosuo. Buniro saw them leaving and muttered softly, "Looks like Shikaku-sama's analysis was wrong." However, the eyes of Fujin, Yugo and Fumito were glued to the water around the bridge. Yugo muttered, "He is right once again." Fumito asked, "Should we make a move?" Fujin replied, "No, we don't know whether they are enemies or not. We would create trouble if they have any other purpose. But stay ready, we will make a move as soon as they do." Though they could see the chakras, they couldn't see to whom the ninjas belonged, as they were hiding underwater. If they weren't Awa ninjas and instead were from the Ide family, then Fujin would have to reassess how to make a move. After all, it would then be an internal conflict rather than a hidden conflict between Konoha and Awa. Though Fujin had killed various forces from the minor villages, all had been done with utmost secrecy. If he openly killed them in front of an entire town, then it would be disadvantageous for Konoha diplomatically. The loss would far exceed the gains made by saving the Kagawa family. Even if he used disguises, it wouldn't take a genius to figure out who the external forces protecting the Kagawa family were. Buniro heard their conversation and was confused. He asked softly, "What do you mean?" Fujin replied, 16 ninjas are hiding in the river. Be ready to flicker." Buniro immediately became serious and mentally prepared himself for a fight. The group watched as the entourage began crossing the bridge. Despite walking on it, none of the Kagawa family ninjas detected the ones hiding underwater in the strong water current. Without leaking any chakra, everyone in the group underwater grabbed a kunai with an explosive tag attached and threw it at the entourage. At the same time, one ninja made the confrontation hand sign. Immediately, the explosive tags attached to the bridge began glowing. Since no incident had happened, most of the people in the entourage had become lax. However, Hoshino Ryochi was on guard and noticed the kunais. He threw a couple of shurikens to intercept them and shouted, "Watch out!" Immediately all ninjas became alert. However, it was too late. Other than the kunai Ryochi deflected, the remaining explosive tags all went off at the same time. The people from Mikosuo, who were watching the entourage leave, watched in horror as the bridge that connected them with the rest of the land of grass blew up. Many immediately began screaming in horror. A few ran away as chaos spread in the town. At the same time, a smile crept on the face of Itomoki, the leader of the Ide family. However, he soon hid it and shouted, "We are under attack. Everyone prepare immediately. We will save our fellow countrymen." Itomoki looked at the explosion with ecstasy in his eyes. He thought, "Great, I was getting worried by how rapidly the Kagawa family was spreading their influence in recent years. Even my interests were being compromised. But with them out of the way, we will no longer have any threat, and by showing how quickly I decided to help them, my prestige will increase uncontrollably." Team Fujin didn't move and just observed the smoke. Soon 15 figures jumped out of the smoke and stood on top of the river. They were Kagawa Noriekyus, Hoshino Ryochi, 8 junins and 5 chunins. Fear and horror could be seen on their faces. Apart from them, everyone was dead. Even Ryochi had a grim expression. Bunjiro thought, 6 chunins died to such a lame attack. These guys aren't worthy of being called chunins. Immediately, the ninjas hidden in the water came out and assaulted them. Fujin saw their headbands and said, "Rogue ninjas, kill them all." Since they weren't wearing the headband belonging to Kasagaka, Fujin could just kill them and claim that the Kagawa family had issued a mission to Konoha to ensure their protection. Since the attackers had disguised themselves as rogue ninjas, no one could question them. All 4 flickered at the same time. Chapter 298 A chaotic battle. Hoshino Ryochi looked at the ninjas approaching them and commanded, "Stay together and guard Noriekyus. I'll cut down their numbers one by one." His words calmed them down. They immediately prepared for the battle thinking, "As long as we have Ryochi, we can get our revenge." Ryochi weaved a hand sign. Lightning could be seen on his palms. He placed his palms in the river and said with utter confidence, "Face the consequences of your actions." Lightning released lightning eels jutsu. The lightning on his palms transformed into small lightning eels and moved towards the rogue nins. However, one of the ninjas weaved hand signs in response. Wind release great breakthrough jutsu. He exhaled a strong wind current into the river. The attack hit the lightning ills head-on and dispersed them. Though the river absorbed the wind current, the winds caused a wave of water to form and move at the Kuza ninjas. The rogue ninjas used the cover provided by the wave to quickly close in the distance. Ryochi was surprised. He thought, "He countered me so easily. This isn't a random attack. Someone wants us all dead." He wanted to use another jutsu, but the ninja who used the great breakthrough jutsu suddenly appeared in front of him and attacked with his kunai. Ryochi raised his kunai and blocked the attack. The rogue ninja smiled and said, "Sorry, I can't let you run amok, Ryochi." At the same time, the other rogue ninjas attacked the ninjas protecting Kagama Noriekyus with earth jutsus. Ryochi realized it and asked, "So the Ide family has allied with Igawatga?" The Iowa ninja smiled but didn't say anything, and continued attacking. He was evenly matched with Ryochi. Ryochi's expression became grim. He didn't have the same confidence as before. He shouted, "We may be weak, but do you think that you can walk over Kusagaku without any consequences?" The Iowa Junin just smirked. However, he suddenly became very serious and dived into the river. Fractions of a second later, an air bullet passed from where he was standing. He quickly looked at where the attack had come from, and his eyes widened. Fujin observed the fight for a minute and jumped in at the right opportunity. He flickered next to an Ayla ninja and shot a couple of dozen air bullets at the rogue ninjas. 4 Ayla ninjas that were closest to him died while a few others were injured, just like the Ayla ninjas. The Kuza ninjas were also surprised. Only Noriekyus was expecting such assistance. He shouted, "They are our allies. Cooperate with them and eliminate these rogue ninjas." The Kuza ninjas were relieved. In just a minute of fighting, they realized that they were completely outmatched. With Ryochi being held back, their hopes were dying very quickly. The Awa ninjas had solemn expressions. A few seconds ago, they were having a complete advantage, but the situation reversed instantly. Taking advantage of the slight distraction, Yugao and Fumito snuck behind 2 of the weakest Iwa ninjas. Since their attention was on Fujin and the Kuza ninjas, they didn't notice them until it was too late. In one quick stab, both killed their targets. The Ayla Junin fighting against Ryochi was alarmed by the situation. He shouted, "Fall back to the bank and stay together." At the same time, he began withdrawing to the opposite bank, but Ryochi immediately attacked him and didn't allow him to leave. Fujin saw the Awa ninjas retreating and activated his chakra field. His eyes widened momentarily as he looked at a location on the opposite bank. He muttered, "This will be a tough fight." As the Awa ninjas were retreating, they approached Buniro, who was hiding under the water. He immediately took advantage. Water release water shuriken jutsu. Dozens of water shurikens formed underwater and launched at the Iwanins. One of Iwa's Junins immediately noticed it and made a hand seal. Water release water wall jutsu. A layer of water appeared in front and under the Iwa ninjas in the nick of time. Unfortunately, Buniro wasn't their only opponent. Fujin flickered next to them, and a sword appeared in his hand. One of the Awa ninjas noticed him and immediately attacked him with his kunai. Fujin swung his sword at the kunai. The remaining Awa ninjas focused on Yuga, Fumito, and the Kuza ninjas, but they turned their attention to Fujin once again. They watched in shock as the headless corpse of their comrade fell into the river. One of the Iwa ninjas muttered, "How can that be? He killed a Junin in the blink of an eye." Fujin continued his attack and swung his sword at the nearest Awa ninja. However, he stopped and moved backwards. An earth spear passed by from the space he was at a moment ago. Fujin turned his head to the left to see hundreds of earth spikes extending from the opposite bank to their location. Fujin thought, "They couldn't hold back anymore. I guess that is to be expected considering the losses they were taking." The hundreds of earth spears forced the Konoha and Kuza ninjas back. Even Buniro was attacked underwater and forced to retreat. The Awa ninjas immediately took the opportunity to retreat to the opposite bank. Apart from Fujin, everyone's expressions became solemn. The attack was just too large in scale. The chaotic battle finally stopped as the 3 sides reassessed the situation. On the bank where Mikostuo town was, Tomoki stopped his ninjas and instructed, "There is another group there. It looks like the Kagawa family was expecting this attack. We will wait and observe the situation for now." His ninjas immediately agreed. In a short while, they had seen 7 capable ninjas fall. In addition, they could see the fearsome earth spears extending from the opposite bank to the center of the river. None of them wanted to risk their lives needlessly. Meanwhile, Tomoki frowned and thought, "As I guessed, Noriekyus came prepared. These should be Konoha Anbo. Fortunately, I contacted Igawatga, otherwise I'd be dead." Fujin observed the situation. On one side of the river were ninjas of the Ide family. On the other side were 21 Iwi ninjas, while on the river, there were 15 ninjas from the Kagawa family and Fujin's team. Fujin observed the ninja who launched the earth spears and thought, an elite Junin. I have been running into way too many of them in recent times. Oh well, now that everyone is out of hiding, I can kill them in one single fight. If Fujin wanted to, he could have killed another 3-4 Ayla ninjas, but he refrained from doing so as he wanted to use them to draw them out. Due to this, any traps that they might have set up would be useless. The ninja, at whom Fujin was staring, looked at the Ayla ninjas who retreated and asked, Chiharu, are you fine? Chiharu nodded and said, yes, but 7 of our ninjas died. The Kuza ninjas have Ryochi among their ranks. But Jin, be careful of that Konoha Enbu with the sword. For some reason, he is giving me a very bad feeling. Jin looked at Fujin and said, it doesn't matter, they will all die today. There wasn't a single shred of doubt in his voice. While Jin was checking on the Iwa ninjas, Noriekuis analyzed, even though Tomoki wants us out of the way, he can't attack us openly. So we have 2 options. We can withdraw into Mikostuo and force them to fight with us. Then these ninjas will withdraw, but this option is very risky. The second option is to fight the Awa ninjas and break through into the interior parts of the country. They won't chase me too deep into the land of the grass. While he was debating internally, Fujin flickered next to Ryochi and Noriekuis and said, Ryochi, your lightning nature will give you an advantage against that guy. Hold him back. I'll eliminate the others. Ryochi frowned and said, that is very risky. With his ability, sneak attacking Noriekuis will be very easy. The scale of earth spears that was launched was just too big. Despite being far from the land, they were still threatened by that attack. However, Noriekuis said, no, that is the only way. Going back to Mikostuo will be very risky, and we all may be wiped out. You hold him back. Konoha ninjas can focus on eliminating the rest, and when the fighting is intense, I'll escape with 4 ninjas protecting me so that I won't hold you back anymore. Ryochi asked, what if there are more Igawatga ninjas hiding? Noriekuis let out a sigh and said, it's unlikely that Igawatga will send so many ninjas here just for me. But if they have, then it is only a matter of time before they kill me. After all, that group is already stronger than us. Just escape and ensure that you stay alive, if possible. Please see that no harm befalls my family. Ryochi didn't want to agree. Unfortunately, he couldn't see any other option. Meanwhile, Fujin was surprised. He looked at Noriekuis and thought, that's a surprise. Most of those in power, even if they are just, won't risk their own lives to help others escape. I guess this is why Hirizen and Shikaku valued him highly. Fujin said, don't worry, I don't sense anyone else, but be careful regardless. Noriekuis nodded. They stopped talking at the same time as Jin. Jin rapidly weaved hand signs and slammed his palms on the ground. Earth Release Earth Spike Hell Jutsu Chapter 299 The Battle on the Riverbank. Earth Release Earth Spike Hell Jutsu. The Kuza ninjas were surprised by the massive chakra emanating from Jin. On the riverbed, thousands of small sharp spikes began forming. Fujin sensed the change and shouted, leave the river immediately. Fujin flickered right away, so did his team. The Kuza ninjas were slightly slower to react as Fujin wasn't their superior, and they didn't feel the change happening under their feet. However, when Noriekuis and Ryochi began moving, they immediately followed. In a second, the spikes were launched. They tore through the strong river current and propelled skyward. 3 Kuza chunins were a bit slow to move. The spikes pierced into their feet and drilled through their bodies, shattering their bones and puncturing their internal organs. They emerged from heads and shoulders and soared into the sky, tracing a vivid arc of red blood. The 3 chunins died without even understanding how they were hit from below the river. The ninjas from the Ide family saw in horror as blood spouted from their bodies as they fell into the river and dyed it red color momentarily. The scene was hellish. They thanked their lucky stars that their leader asked them to stay away. As soon as Fujin stepped on the riverbank, he felt the ground under his feet transforming into small spikes. He immediately flickered while thinking, this is annoying. Even my team might not stay safe for long from such a barrage. Fujin flickered continuously while building his chakra up. Jin tried attacking him and the places he might appear in, but Fujin was too fast and unpredictable for him and maintained a sufficient distance from the remaining Iwa ninjas. Wind Release Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. Jin was surprised. He thought, he is good, a Sealer supercharged jutsu. However, he didn't react. Instead, a ninja next to him slammed his palms on the ground. Earth Release Earthwall Jutsu. A gigantic earthwall appeared instantly and protected the Ela ninjas. At the same time, Jin changed his target from Fujin to the Kuza ninjas, thinking, The Konoha Anbu are quite strong, it should be an elite unit. I'll whittle down the Kuza numbers first and then use the numerical advantage to crush them. The Kuza ninjas had seen Fujin dodging at a fast pace. They began imitating his movements and didn't stand in the same spot for long. Jin sensed their movements and smirked while thinking, I couldn't hit him due to his speed. Do you think that you can replicate the same speed? Jin predicted where they would dodge and preemptively began creating spikes on those spots. This immediately created more pressure on the Kuza ninjas, as the number of times they had to dodge increased by 2-3 times. Meanwhile, Fujin looked at the wall and decided, time to cut down their numbers. Wind release vacuum serial wave jutsu. Fujin exhaled blades of wind at several angles. Behind the giant wall, the Awa ninjas were feeling quite safe when the blades cut through the wall like a hot knife through butter, catching them completely off guard. Jin, who had already neutralized another Kuza ninja and injured a couple more and managed to keep the Kuza ninjas and Fujin's team at bay, was shocked. He immediately jumped up to dodge the wind blade heading towards him. Jin's eyes widened as he realized the power behind the wind blades. He wondered, wind vacuum technique. Who is this guy? Wait, if he knows wind vacuum technique, then... Shit. Jin immediately created an earth clone. The experienced Awa ninjas also reacted instinctively. However, 8 Awa ninjas couldn't react in time. They were cut into 2 and died on the spot. Jin watched as his eyes turned red. He had lost 15 ninjas on such a simple mission. The losses had now exceeded the acceptable limit. However, before he could even think of retaliating, Fujin fired vacuum bullets at the ninjas, who had jumped in the air to dodge. 2 bullets were heading at Jin. Jin looked at the incoming attack and thought, as I had expected, the earth clone he created seconds ago pushed him away as the vacuum bullets pierced it and dispelled it. Jin barely managed to dodge the attack. However, not everyone could do the same. Another 2 Awa ninjas were killed. Fujin observed the situation and analyzed. These ninjas are all elites. I had targeted 6 but only 2 died. They are much stronger than the Suna bunch that tried to hunt me. Looks like Onoki greatly values this mission. Is Iwa that desperate to make inroads into grass or waterfall? Tomoki saw Fujin's counterattack and gulped in fear. He was no longer confident in Iwa's victory. He decided, if Iwa fails to kill Noriekyuis, I will distance myself from them and claim that this attack had nothing to do with me. After all, I doubt Iwa would claim these ninjas as their own and hence won't antagonize the only noble in the land of grass that supports them. Fujin's consecutive attacks finally gave his allies time to catch their breath. He also changed the numerical advantage in their favor. Yuga, Fumito and Buniro immediately went on the attack. Ryochi remembered Fujin's words and immediately rushed towards Jin. He realized, Konoha Anbu captain is right. If I don't restrict him, it's only a matter of time before the remaining Kuza ninjas are killed. Only I and the Konoha Anbu might be able to escape. The remaining Kuza ninjas split into 2. 4 stayed next to Noriekyuis while the rest followed Ryochi. Ryochi weaved hand signs while running and supercharged his jutsu. Lightning release force darkness jutsu. He extended his arms towards Jin. As bolts of lightning crackled on his arms, he discharged all the lightning bolts at Jin. Jin saw the lightning bolts with a frown on his face as he thought. Lightning is the biggest weakness of earth jutsus. Back in the Third Great Ninja War, he gained fame against us because his unit encountered a division that was exclusively made of earth affinity ninjas and didn't have any strong junin. Despite the frown, Jin wasn't worried about Ryochi. Instead, his attention was on Fujin. The threat of wind vacuum jutsus far exceeded lightning in his eyes. Chiharu appeared in front of Jin. After knowing that Ryochi was with the Kagawa family entourage, Jin had specifically requested Chiharu to join this mission to counter his lightning jutsus. Even though Jin could still deal with Ryochi, it would be very annoying and would allow Fujin to run amok. Wind release great breakthrough jutsu. Chiharu confronted Ryochi with a supercharged jutsu as well. Both jutsu clashed. Ryochi frowned and stopped. Despite the power of the jutsus being the same, he was at a disadvantage. The winds neutralized his lightning bolts one after another. However, Fujin flickered next to Ryochi. Fire release searing migraine jutsu. Taking advantage of the winds, Fujin exhaled a massive fire at Chiharu. Chiharu's eyes widened as he cursed. Shit, he also knows fire jutsus. Jin also became serious. He was waiting to find an opportunity against Fujin. Instead, it was Fujin who seized the opportunity. He gathered chakra and slammed his hands on the ground. Another gigantic wall appeared out of the ground. It was tall and wide enough to keep the massive firestorm on the other side temporarily. However, Jin shouted, "Move away from the walls." Every Awa ninja followed his instruction without any hesitation. A second later, blades of wind cut through the gigantic wall with ease. Fortunately, the Awa ninjas were far enough to have the time to dodge them. Jin observed the blades with an annoyed expression. He thought, "Fortunately my sensei had informed me about Shimura Danzo's skills. Otherwise, the death toll would keep piling." Still, wind vacuum technique and such ruthlessness. Is he Danzo's successor? If so, he can't be allowed to live any longer. Who knows how many of our sufferings had that bastard's hand in the shadows. If another shinobi of darkness appears in Konoha, then we will suffer for a few more decades. Kagawa Noriequus noticed the destruction and thought, "I, O Lord Hokage one." He instructed, "Let's escape." Chapter 300, Breaking Through Awa's Obstruction. Taking opportunity of the situation, Noriequus, along with 4 Junins, began escaping. Jin sensed it and muttered, "Do you think it'd be this easy to escape from me?" He waved hand signs and slammed his hands on the ground once again. Despite the large distance between them, the ground under the feet of Noriequus's group turned into a swamp. They immediately jumped backwards. However, several mud balls were launched at them from the swamp. One of the Kuza ninjas weaved hand signs, "Water release water wall jutsu." A water wall appeared in front of them and stopped the mud balls. However, soon the land to the right of them began moving. A second later, a large bronze dragon head popped out of the ground. It opened its mouth and shot multiple cannonballs made of mud at the group. The Kuza ninjas hurriedly dodged while the dragon head dived underground once again. One of the Kuza ninjas shouted, "Be careful, it will attack us from below and blow itself up." His words alarmed Noriequus and the rest. They stayed on their toes and tried attacking the dragon underground in order to make it explode deep underground. However, several spikes and needles were launched at them, forcing them to keep evading and cutting off their escape routes. Fujin sensed the attack and thought, "Such a large range, but why hasn't he ordered a retreat? Their losses are already too high and this situation is very disadvantageous and dangerous for him." Though he and Ryachi tried to stop him, they were outnumbered. When Fujin used any vacuum attack, Jin would move away and then place his palms on the ground once again. Finally, the remaining Kuza and Konoha ninjas made their way across the fire and debris and joined the battle. Ryachi instructed, "Keep their weaker ninjas busy. We will eliminate their leaders." The Kuza ninjas immediately obeyed his command. As for Fujin's team, they had already attacked. With their aid, the number advantage was evened out. Fujin flickered towards Chiharu while Ryachi confronted Jin. Jin confronted Ryachi while observing the battlefield. He analyzed, "Despite the enemy reinforcements, we still had one more ninja. 5 ninjas are equally matched while we have the advantage in 3 fights." But, though it looked like they had the overall advantage, Jin was worried. Chiharu couldn't match up to Fujin at all. He barely hung on. Jin sighed, "I can't afford to take any more pointless losses. If I knew that someone as ferocious as he would be protecting Noriequus, then I would have redone our entire strategy. I didn't want to resort to this, but we don't have any other option now. I can only use my final card. Though this could put my village in some trouble, it's better than just retreating with nothing but losses." Within half a minute of confrontation, Fujin had gained the absolute advantage. He was about to deal the final blow when he suddenly jumped away. Numerous earth spikes assaulted his previous position. He looked at Jin. Jin gritted his teeth and cursed, "Fine, I'll let Kagawa Noriequus go, but you all will stay here." He stopped attacking Noriequus's group and focused entirely on the existing battlefield. Immediately, Fujin and a few other ninjas were assaulted by spikes, needles, spears and other weapon-shaped projectiles from the ground. Apart from Fujin, everyone fell at a disadvantage. Ryachi tried his best to stop him but had no success. A frown appeared on Fujin's face as he analyzed. Something is off. Though the move is tactical, he should have done this long ago, and even now he isn't retreating. It's as if he is assured of his victory. Fujin had a bad feeling. Immediately, a massive amount of chakra was released by Fujin. Jin was alarmed as winds began flowing around Fujin. Suddenly, vast amounts of wind were blasted behind Fujin. An Awa ninja, who was confronting Fumito, was hit by this blast wave and lost his balance and fell towards Fumito. Fumito immediately took advantage of the opening and jabbed his tanto into his throat. Meanwhile, Fujin disappeared from his spot and appeared behind the ninja fighting with Yuga. Before the Ayla ninja could even react, he was beheaded. Yuga watched with shock in her eyes. She thought, "I couldn't see him at all." However, the one who was the most shocked was Jin. He was maintaining control over the entire battlefield, but 2 more of his subordinates died. He immediately concentrated on Fujin and launched multiple jutsus. However, Fujin once again disappeared and appeared behind the ninja fighting Buniro and killed him as well. Before Jin could react, Fujin disappeared once again and appeared behind Shiharu. Shiharu immediately turned around and swung his kunai at Fujin. Though he wasn't very skilled at it, chakra could be seen flowing through his kunai. However, instead of attacking with his sword, Fujin just shot a vacuum bullet at point-blank range. Shiharu had no chance of dodging it. The bullet pierced through his forehead, leaving a huge hole in his head. He dropped dead as well. Jin was enraged at that sight. He shouted, "Bastard, stop running and fight me." He launched more spikes at Ryochi and forced him back while he rushed at Fujin. Winds blasted behind Fujin once again as he appeared in front of Jin in the blink of an eye. Jin saw Fujin swinging his sword at him. He only had one thought, shit. Jin's body turned black as he tried to grab Fujin's sword with his right hand. His right hand was even blacker than the rest of his body. Fujin's sword hit his right hand. Though the iron skin jutsu was strong, it was no match for a sword enhanced by wind nature chakra flow. In addition, Fujin was also assisted by his massive momentum. The sword cut his right palm open. It cut through his right forearm. Jin gritted his teeth and endured the pain and managed to just get his body out of the way of Fujin's sword. However, he had to pay an extremely high price. Jin's right hand was cut off. Half of his right forearm was cut off vertically. What remained just bled and hurt like hell. Jin looked at Fujin with hatred in his eyes. Though Jin and Fujin were quite evenly matched, their strengths lay in different areas. Fujin excelled at close-range fighting and had numerous jutsus to make him lethal at mid-range and long range. Meanwhile, Jin was better than Fujin at controlling the battlefield and fighting while keeping his enemies at bay. Though his close-range skills were nothing to scoff at, he wasn't comparable to Fujin. Under normal circumstances, he would maintain his distance and keep Fujin away. Such a battle would only result in a draw. That is why both Fujin and Jin tried to target the weaker enemies to gain a numerical advantage while distracting the other. Fujin gained an advantage in that aspect. He didn't care about the losses Kuza suffered, and he had killed far more Aiwa ninjas than the damage Jin managed to inflict on Kuza ninjas. This caused Jin to make a mistake and end up confronting Fujin head-on. Since Jin had stopped targeting them, Noriequus and the 4 Junins with him left the banks and began running towards the interior. Noriequus said, "We will run full time till we reach back to our town. Once we reach there, Igawaka won't dare to attack us. We will lodge a complaint with Lord Daimyo and make Iwa pay dearly." The Junins nodded. They ran a couple 100 meters without any obstruction. Since none of the Iwa ninjas chased them, one Junin said, "Looks like your plan has worked. The Iwa ninjas can't spare anyone to chase after us." They were relieved. Noriequus nodded and said, "Yes, but stay on guard. We can't afford any more loss." Noriequus's words were stuck in his mouth as he felt extremely high heat on his right side. He and the Junins turned around to see. A look of shock and terror appeared on their faces. A massive rock covered in lava was heading straight at them. They wanted to get out of the way. Unfortunately, it was too late. Before their feet could move, the massive lava-covered rock hit them. It crushed the 5 ninjas under its immense weight while burning them and exploded almost immediately.